helps us in our rankings. And I don't like falling off the rankings. You're slacking, people. I appreciate you, and I know what you're capable of. And I want you to get mine, Ryan Weaver's new single. Get that sucker out there and share it. It's on my YouTube, and it's also where music is offered. It's called He's Still Your President. And I'm quite proud of it, Stevie Helms.
You did a good job, son.
Proud of that song.
You did a good job.
Excited about it. Now we're going back in. We're going to do a full band deal. Get your Blaze TV. Go to blazetv.com. Sign up for a year. You can use promo code CHS or Chad. We love y'all. God bless you. See you next time. Bye.
It is Super Tuesday. Welcome, America, to the Blaze TV's coverage of Super Tuesday. It's going to be an interesting night. We have a lot to cover. I want to tell you some of the things that are happening. Stu is giving us all of the counts. He's watching for that. We have Steve Deace coming up, Bill O'Reilly, Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, Chad Prather is here, Sara Gonzales, Jon Miller, Eliza Schaffer, Giancarlo Sopo. We have this covered with all of the Blaze superstars and the voices that you want to hear, and we're going to give you all of the information you need. Tonight is, as Reagan said in 1964 to the country, a time for choosing. And just like then, it was a time of choosing, are we going to go more socialist, or are we going to return to America? 1964, he was way ahead of the game. When you had Barry Goldwater running, that was who Ronald Reagan was for. He had been a guy who had been a Democrat his whole life and decided this party has changed. This is not what I thought it was. And he changed to a Republican. Of course, Barry Goldwater lost. And at the same time, William F. Buckley was running for mayor of New York. Those two, Goldwater and Buckley, changed the Conservative Party. Goldwater only picked up 56 electoral college votes when he ran, a dismal showing. And I believe Buckley lost, what was the number? He only got like 13% of the vote. But those two men changed the Republican Party. Is that going to be said the same for Bernie Sanders? If he loses, will this movement even grow way past him and come visit us later? We have a lot of things to cover. I want to get right to Stu, who is at the chalkboard tonight, and he's going to be giving us all of the numbers. We have, how many delegates are up for grabs today?
The total number, I don't know off the top of my head, Glenn, a lot.
And we've already had some closures. We're going to talk about the closings here and the numbers in just a second. But I wanted to start with you, Stu, on what are the rules that they're playing by tonight?
Very important here, because a lot of people, when you watch a normal election night, you're just looking for who wins a state. That's sort of important here, but not all that important. It's about the delegates, and it's about how far down that goes. The narrative for the next couple of weeks will be set by winning states, but the actual delegate math is important. Here, we kind of came up with here's a generic mythical state with 100 delegates to show you how this actually works, okay? This is example scenario A. You have Biden, Bernie, Bloomberg, Warren, and Gabbard. So let's say this is the way the vote breaks out. 35% for Biden, 22% for Sanders, 15% for Bloomberg, 15% Warren, and 3% for Gabbard. The first thing they do is they draw a line of validity. So are you a viable candidate? In this particular case, it's always 15%. So Gabbard at 3% gets eliminated. Okay, anyone who voted for Gabbard is gone.
That's not mythical. It always is 15%
it's 15%.
In every state?
Yeah, yes, it's 15% across the board, and in districts, by the way.
This is the way the Democrats do it. This is not a Republican. This is the people who say every vote must count.
Every vote must count, Glenn. So if you get 14%, that's a whole other story. We're going to show you this in a second.
Okay.
So this is the way the delegate math actually works. I won't bore you with the actual math calculations here, but in this case, with 100 delegates in the state, Biden gets 40, Sanders gets gets 25, Bloomberg gets 18, Warren gets 17. Okay, that's how it was with that lineup. Now, if we just tick down Warren and Sanders 1 percentage point, okay, everything else is exactly the same. Let's go back to the board and show Bloomberg and Warren at 14% instead of 15%. Because right now you see there's a big difference. Now, normally you'd say that's not a big difference at all, but now the viability line is above both Bloomberg and Warren.
Wow.
They changed the math and the way it works. They get nothing. Instead, Biden gets 61 delegates, and Sanders gets 39. If you look at this in just a very basic way, in the previous alignment, Bloomberg and Warren lost by about 20 delegates.
Right.
In this alignment, 1% off of their numbers, they lose by 60.
And
you see how fast this can happen.
And you're dismissing 30, in this case, 30% of the people who spent their time to go out and vote. They just wasted their vote.
Dismissed with no value whatsoever.
I heard today on the New York Times Daily. Did you listen to it this morning?
I did not, no.
Okay, so this morning they were talking about it, and they were talking about Virginia, and they said, they were talking to one guy, and he said, I'm going to wait to see how things are going, because if it's going Sanders' way, I don't want to throw my vote away, and I will go with Sanders, but I really want to vote for Joe Biden. And so I'll wait to see how Joe Biden is doing.
Well, people are finding out right now how Joe Biden is doing. We actually have a couple states to call.
All right, so let's call these states, but we, unlike Fox News or CNN, or I mean, God forbid you're watching CNN. Are you stuck at an airport? We're going to call these things, but we do. We have something a little different. Who are you going to call first?
We're going to call Vermont first.
For Bernie Sanders?
For Bernie Sanders.
Every call that comes in, you'll hear a couple of sounds. You'll hear the theme of the program that alert us that we have to make another call. This is the Michael Bloomberg theme. Can we give the Bernie Sanders theme here? Because we're about to call Vermont. So when you hear this theme for Bernie Sanders, you will know. Go ahead, turn it up a bit. So when you hear that music, you'll know we're about to call another state for Bernie Sanders.
I feel like I should be like walking in black and white.
Right.
So we give Vermont to Bernie, which is not a surprise, by the way. We did expect Bernie to hold on to Vermont, his home state.
Now, Virginia is a different story, and you're calling that one. Here's the Joe Biden theme. When you hear this music, people think he's kind of old-fashioned, but that's the Sleepy Joe theme. So when you, and this is not saying that he's old and outdated at all. He's very contemporary. So when you hear this music, you'll know the state is going to Joe Biden.
Right, and here we go. This is Joe Biden's going to get both Virginia, which is a big one. And I will say, like, one of the big issues here is all of the networks called it right when the polls closed, meaning a blowout win. It looks like he's up around half the vote in Virginia, and as well North Carolina.
And that was called right at 7:30
as well. And we do have one other state we can call here at this point, Glenn, which is Alabama. This one very much expected for Joe Biden once again.
So give me the Joe Biden theme again, please. Calling another state.
It was already on when I said we were going to call.
They turned it off.
Yeah, okay. So there you go. So he's already won 3 states. Here's the thing, Glenn, just to set the scene for the coverage going forward. This night could not have started better for Joe Biden than it has. That does not mean he's going to sweep the night. He's not done anything outside of sort of the southern region here. So is his strength only in the South is the only question right now. He's blowing out expectations in all of these states right now. Blowing out, exceeding the polls by a significant margin.
Okay, so Virginia is a really good sign for Joe Biden, but could you please bring up the... You can stop with Joe Biden music. Could you please bring up the poll, the exit poll in Texas, Democratic voters on socialism in an NBC exit poll. California, the voters, 54% favorable on socialism. North Carolina, 48-42. Tennessee, 47-44. Texas, 57-37. It is stronger in Texas than it is in California.
Oh, my gosh. Time to move again.
Yeah. Right?
All right.
What did we do to this state? What happened? We
Everywhere
moved
we
here
go.
and they go socialist. That is stunning, and that could mean not really good things for Joe Biden in the great state of Texas. I see Chad Prather on the...
I can't wait any longer on this. I think we got to get this party started,
right?
Especially with the news about Texas, because we have the 3 wise men out here, and I know how much you love Bernie Sanders. We didn't have vodka.
These aren't three. Those are three little bottles of Jack Daniels.
Little Jack Daniels. Well, Jack brings a lot of wisdom. We did not have the
Right.
But the more we hear that Bernie's winning or advancing in these polls or in these exits, I'm going to just move them a little bit closer to you, Glenn, because I know by the end of this you're probably going to need a drink.
So it's like the nativity scene at the house on Christmas, where the wise men move closer to the baby Jesus.
That's right. It's like gifts for Jesus. You know, it's got to be for birthday and Christmas, Jesus. But they're going to move a little bit closer to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. So they haven't moved very close. Could we please play Michael Bloomberg and his wonderful, wonderful salute to Texas? Here he is, Michael Bloomberg.
You spent a lot of time in Texas? What do you...
Tejas, we'd say here.
What'd you say?
Tejas.
Tejas.
That's Spanish for Texas.
Okay. All right.
You're in a Cuban neighborhood, so you got to know how your audience.
Okay, all right. Holy cow. The most Tell me anyone if there is a more unlikable man than Michael Bloomberg and his pandering in Texas or Tejas. We go over to the panel now, and let's have a quick conversation with the people of the panel. Will you just do the introductions here, Sarah?
Yeah, sure. So we have Giancarlo Sopo, or as I like to call him, Giancarlo Sopo of the Blaze.com. Now he is Cuban. I don't know why I give the Italian accent, but for some reason it works.
Especially since you are Hispanic.
I am.
Yeah. That makes no sense whatsoever.
I am,
like
although
Tejas.
I am from Tejas.
Right.
So, and we have, of course, Chad Prather of the Chad Prather Show.
I'm white. I'm here just to see what they wear on the red carpet tonight. I'm sure they're going to be fabulous.
Who are you wearing?
Yeah, it's going to be fabulous.
So let me start with socialism. I see this as, there's a lot of people that won't put a Donald Trump sign in their yard. They'll put a Beto sign in their yard, but they wouldn't put a Donald Trump sign in their yard, and mainly because they don't want to be hassled. Mm-hmm. However, I think if this were boiled down, seeing how Bernie Sanders does tonight, if Bernie Sanders is actually a viable candidate, I think there is a sign that all of Americans would put in there, and it would be America versus communism. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because I think it could be boiled down to that. I don't think Bernie Sanders is a vote against Trump as much as it is a vote against capitalism, where I think Biden is a vote against Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I take it a step further. Regardless of who the Democrats nominate, whether it's Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders, it's clear that Sanders is winning the intellectual war. Like we just saw in those exit polls, over 50% of Democratic primary voters have a favorable view of socialism. That would have been unheard of 10, 20 years ago. So the fact that he's having this much of an impact, it shows that he's really moving the needle of the Democratic Party and continues pushing it further to the left to a point where it's become basically unrecognizable.
We have closed the polls in Texas with the exception of El Paso, so we'll be hearing some of the numbers from Texas. Stu, will they be calling Texas or be releasing any of the numbers, or do they wait for El Paso?
Likely they'll wait till 9.
Okay.
So it's if there's, especially with Texas, and is expected to be a pretty close state, sort of the bellwether of the evening. So they will probably wait till 9, though it's not impossible that they release some results early.
So Chad, did you grow up in Texas?
No, but I've been here the last 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I lived here in the late 80s. Then I moved back in the late 90s, and then I came back in 2010. I've seen 3 states. Mm-hmm. And the one I'm seeing today, 10 years after I moved here, is terrifying. Yeah. It is fundamentally changing.
The migration towards purple, if you will, of Texas is very shocking. Years ago I said to someone who is a native Texan, I said, the thing about you Texans is you guys would rather be Texans than Americans. And he said, Absolutely. And I said it tongue-in-cheek, but he said, no, don't push it. You're close to the truth on that. And I thought, it's funny because Texas has always prided itself as being its own people. They fly their flag at the same height as the American flag. They've been their own country. And they always threaten we're going to secede and all of these things that are out there walking with that tall, humble arrogance that Texans do. And now they're bowing down to this ideology that leads to, as you said, intellectual debate. But I'd say it's a faux intellectual debate because really and truly socialism is something that is not only anti-capitalism and anti-American, it's anti-personal freedoms, it's anti-personal property, it's anti-everything that we have valued. And I think we have focused on that thing for so long. It's like that big red button that we've said to our kids, don't push, don't push, don't push. And now everybody says, let's push the red button and see what we get.
So I don't know if Texas, though, is migrating to purple as much as people are migrating here.
To Texas.
And Texans have just assumed that Texas was a safe haven for common sense, not even Republican, just common sense. We don't do it that way here in Texas. That they are ignoring it, and they don't think they're in trouble, and they're in big trouble.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also say that the Democrats have been really, really good and effective at their messaging. I mean, Chad, you mentioned it being this faux intelligence type, thing. I think that's what it comes down to, is that they're very good at masquerading all of these socialist programs as, well, but this is a free thing for you, and you're going to get more free stuff, and how could that possibly be bad? And they make these voters feel so warm and fuzzy inside that they think that they're getting something that is completely the opposite of what they would get with actual socialism. The problem is that they're not going to find that out until it's too late, and we're already well down that path. I don't know how we get back at that point, but there have been a lot of local races, even here in Texas, that, they have turned blue down ballot. And even Texans, I mean, I was born and raised in Texas. Even people who were born and raised in Texas do not pay attention to it until it may be too late. So hopefully we don't get to that point, especially when we're looking at, the presidential level.
Being the only born and bred Texan, and the rest of us got here as soon as we could.
I was conceived here, but, we'll hold off.
We didn't need to know that.
I just moved here last year.
I will tell you that I have a friend who called up his brother, who was having a baby. He was in the military. He's in Virginia, and his wife was having a baby. And he said, "Now we're going to agree that my son who's being born is going to be a Texan, right?" And his brother seriously said, "No, he's Virginian." And he told his wife, I assume asked her, but my wife would have said no. So maybe he told his wife, "You got to get in the car. We have to go to Texas." She was due like that day. They drove straight from Virginia all the way to Texas just so his son would be a Texan. Because that's the way Texans. That's the way Texans are, and it is a humble thing. Not anything against your state. It's just that this is Texas. Yeah. And I can't put what I'm seeing in the polls together with that Texan, other than people think it's arrogance, but it's not. It's just a pride, and they'll live side by side with you. What is it going to take for them to wake up?
Yeah. You know what's really scary also from what I saw in the exit polls in 2018 was that actually like native Texans were voting as Democratic as the transplants. So that was pretty terrifying.
Well, is it, do you think that is Texans that are saying? What was that poll? What was the number? I think it was
57 in
57, where in California, socialism only has a 54% rating?
Yeah, it was a lot of young people.
Yeah, there is a lot of young people that are doing that. And I can tell you, I moved to Texas 20 years ago because I came out here and I fell in love with the attitude.
Me too.
And I fell in love with the big sky and the bigness of it. And I said, and so 6 months later I was moving out here. But if you look at the last senatorial race and election that happened between Senator Cruz and Robert Francis O'Rourke, Tarrant County, which is Fort Worth. And I know people think Fort Worth is Dallas. They're 40 miles apart geographically, a million miles apart culturally. Historically speaking, Fort Worth held on to its heritage. But it voted blue for the first time in its history. So I can tell you that with Fort Worth hasn't seen the same dynamic growth as a Dallas or a
they still
Houston
run
or
bulls
Austin.
down the street once a week.
11 and 4.
Is it every day?
At the stockyards. That's awesome. Yeah.
They run the Longhorns down the street. So they do the cattle drive. They still do those things. You can still go see many historical places, buildings, locations where gunfights happened, right? They have all of these things that are there, but it still voted blue 2 years ago.
Okay, so how much of this, I saw a poll of Hispanics in California today.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say Hispanics. I saw a poll of new Americans. God forbid anybody in this poll was an illegal. They are just new dreamers, okay? So, but they had come from South America or Mexico. They're now in America. And who are they voting for? And almost all of them were saying Bernie Sanders. Houston is almost Mexico now. And it looks like Mexico. It kind of acts a little bit like Mexico. Maybe it's just me, but there are parts of it that just feel like I'm in Mexico. How much of this is the influence and the love of socialism, because that's what they've been raised on? How much of that is this love of socialism that has come not from California, but from south of the border?
Yeah, if you let's take that I-35 corridor and you go down to San Antonio, which is about 4 hours south of here if you're in the car. So you go below San Antonio, 2 hours, 2.5 hours down into Laredo. You can go even further down into McAllen, Brownsville, and that kind of area. So you're seeing much the same dynamic that's happening as he described in Houston. You certainly see it in San Antonio. It has become another Mexico in that regard, and so has everything south of it. People tend to forget just how big this state is. You're looking at about 960 miles from the southern tip of Texas up to the northern border of it. That's how far it is from the northern border of Texas all the way to Canada.
Yeah.
This is a big state.
It took me a full day to drive from Brownsville, Texas. This is back in the 80s when it was, everything was measured in long necks. How many long necks does it take you to drive from here to here? It took me 24 hours, I believe. It was 24. It was a full day of driving, early in the morning till early in the morning, just to get from Brownsville to Texarkana. Yeah. It took me just as long to get from Texarkana, Texas, Arkansas, to Chicago.
Yeah.
And you don't. When you drive it, you just can't believe how big it is.
It's vast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have and Giancarlo may be able to speak to this better than I can, but I have a hard time believing that really when it comes down to it, that Hispanics who live in Texas, who perhaps migrated here from another country, actually hold on to these socialistic ideals, because there's a reason that they migrated here.
But
right?
You know what? There's a reason people came from California. Why are people coming from Mexico different than the people who came from California?
That's fair, but a communist regime and the stories that can be passed down from, your grandparents and your grandparents' grandparents, I think resonate with you a little bit more than, the problem that's going on in California. And if you really look at it, Hispanics culturally, we are a conservative culture.
So what's happening?
It's the messaging of the
it varies by
Democrats.
state, and it also varies by election. So I do want to give you an example, right? So in 2018, the governor of the great state of Texas, he won something like 44% of the Hispanic vote. So it really does vary depending. They're voting very strategically. It depends on the race. It depends on the candidate. It also depends greatly on outreach. So what I will tell every conservative who's running, you need to engage Hispanics. They're natural allies. But if you don't go out and talk to them, if you don't go out and ask them for your vote, they're not going to vote for you. And what we're seeing, though, in the Democratic primary is that the Hispanic Democratic electorate tends to skew younger. And young Hispanics are very progressive. It is true that south of the border, we don't have the same philosophical constructs that we have here. So you're going to see a lot of Hispanics coming here from Mexico who have very left-wing political views.
Before I change the subject here, let me ask just one more question. Hang on, I can't ask one more question. Let's go to Stu. You're calling another state?
We do have another state to call, and it is a big one. American Samoa. We can now call American Samoa, and this is going to be the only time I say this tonight, so savor it as I say it. We can call it for Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg, who spent God only knows how much money in American Samoa to rack up 175 total votes and win the state.
Wait a minute, you actually have an AS? You have that?
No votes.
We have it, AS.
Wow, I wouldn't have even thought you were way ahead. I would have just put a picture of the rock up there.
We could have gone that direction. I will say this another time, the only time I'm going to say this tonight. Tulsi Gabbard second. She should pick up at least 2 delegates in American Samoa, so she's on the board.
Wow. Okay, thank you very much, Stu. I appreciate it calling it for Michael Bloomberg, whose name I don't think we're going to hear very often. So let me go back, if I can, to I started this evening as this is a time for choosing. And what's scary about that was That was really early, but it was a big ideological movement, especially with the youth. Bill Buckley, Ronald Reagan, Barry Goldwater, they lost their shirts. They didn't win, but they galvanized a movement, and within 12 years, they were taking over the party. We are this close to the Democratic Party being eaten by communist revolutionaries, I believe. In 4 years, what does even a loss mean for Bernie Sanders when he's doing as well as he is?
Yeah, so what they say about the 1964 election is that Goldwater won it. It just took 16 years to count all the votes.
Correct.
So what might be happening in this election is that Bernie Sanders might lose, but we may be looking at an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as the nominee 4 years from now, 8 years from now, and that's what's really scary. What's terrible?
Could that happen?
Yeah.
Bite your tongue, young man.
Yeah, I think you need to move the Jack Daniels closer to me just a little.
Oh no!
Oh, it's ALC. Yeah.
Oh, say no more, Glenn.
You need a whole bottle.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's what's terrifying. What's really scary to me is the ideological trajectory of the Democratic Party. This is not John F. Kennedy's Democratic Party. It's not Harry Truman's Democratic Party. It is not even the Democratic Party of the 1980s. This is an entire, or Bill Clinton's Democratic Party. This is a Democratic Party that is being hijacked at the highest levels by socialists, and we're now seeing it trickle down into the electorate, where we're seeing in a Democratic primary in a state like Texas, 57% of people supporting socialism. That is insane.
Okay, a couple of things. I want you to know that we have Dave Rubin coming up here in about 8 minutes. Also, we are going to be taking your questions. We are live today on Blaze TV, of course, BlazeTV.com. If you're not a subscriber, you don't want to miss any of the shows. You can go to BlazeTV.com and use, what is it, Super 20? Is that it? What is it? What's the promo code? Super. Use Super, and you can save 20% on your year subscription. We're also looking through social media. We have somebody who will be with us in a few minutes, Rob Eno, who's going to be monitoring all of the other media sources. I think this may be a bad night for MSNBC, but we will monitor all those. We want to take your questions. We will look to social media. Our Facebook, we are on the Blaze TV Facebook page. We're on the Blaze TV or Blaze TV YouTube, also BlazeTV.com. If you'll just hashtag us or tweet us at Blaze TV with the hashtag Blaze TV Super Twos, that's TUES, we'll take your questions. So anything you want us to talk about or answer for you, or something that we're missing, please let us know. You are monitoring along with our social media team.
Yes, yes. I have got a question for you guys from Jim Stevens. Jim wants to know, who do you think Trump wants to face in the general election and why?
Bernie Sanders.
100% Bernie Sanders, absolutely.
Why?
Well, there's a part of me that thinks I sort of, it's risky, but I want him to face him. We've talked about this. I want him to go ahead and cut the head off of socialism right now. Let's nip it in the bud. My fear is, as Giancarlo said, the two heads grow back. A Barry Goldwater that leads to a Ronald Reagan scenario. That scares me. But I think he believes that the country is not going to vote ultimately for socialism. Joe Biden can sit on stage and be completely quiet and win the debate.
I think I was watching Donald Trump at CPAC. You were there too, weren't you? And watching his speech, and he asked, who do you want me to run against? Overwhelming, it was Bernie Sanders over Biden. Yeah. I think Biden is easier to beat myself. However, a bigger defeat overall, because they'd lose the House, they'd lose the Senate, is Bernie Sanders. If Donald Trump doesn't lose, if the economy stays together, if, it's just too big of a bet for me.
It's a big one.
But I think Donald Trump knows it's the end of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party would be destroyed if that's who they nominated. And it would either rebirth into something more moderate, or it would rebirth into a full socialist communist
And when we
party.
see the dynamics of the chessboard here, the Democratic Party knows that too.
Yeah.
They know it's their suicide
How
shot.
do you think, again, I hate to concentrate on Texas, but Texas and California are the big wins tonight. And with the numbers coming out of the exit poll of how many people in Texas that voted love socialism, that could be good for Bernie Sanders. I'm having a hard time getting my arms around Joe Biden putting his arm around Beto, of all people, and in Texas saying this is the guy who's going to work on gun control. And Beto's the guy who says, damn right, we'll take your guns. That's not a Texas attitude at all.
Yeah.
Maybe Dallas, but that's kind of like New York, get rope. That's not Texas. How does that play here?
And I completely agree with you. We discussed this on the News and Why It Matters earlier this afternoon as well, because, we were talking about Joe Biden and him being viewed as more moderate. But when you really listen to the things that he's saying, right after he wins South Carolina and he gets that momentum, he's going into it assigning Beto as his, gunman who, like you said, for all intents and purposes, we believe that to mean he's going to confiscate law-abiding citizens' guns. And he's out there telling people, well, those of you who got a Trump tax cut, just be ready because we're going to raise your taxes. I don't think that plays to the independence that he needs in order to win in the general election. I mean, he is saying all of the things, the reasons why independents go, you know what? I don't think I can vote for the Democrats. I think I have to vote for President Trump. They're doing it again. They're doubling down on it.
We're going to Dave Rubin here in just a few minutes, but let me end this panel. Are we going to Dave here in 3 minutes? Is he ready in L.A.? So let me ask you, because you're kind of in the same situation that Dave Rubin was in. Just a few years ago, you were a Democrat.
Yeah.
And then you saw the Democrats go crazy.
Yeah.
Tell me about that transition, and tell me what you think is happening with other Democrats.
I think, so I keep a very close pulse on politics, and I read from a lot of different sources. So I realized very early on in 2015, 2017, that there was something clearly off with the Democratic Party. So when I just began questioning my friends about it, they were like, well, it's all in your head. Now a lot of people are realizing exactly what I was saying because they're seeing it in election results. They're seeing someone like Bernie Sanders win states where he otherwise wouldn't be winning. Mm-hmm. So I think we're seeing a lot more people are paying attention now, and they're realizing what's happening in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We're going to now go over to our studios in Los Angeles with Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin does his show, and we are thrilled to have him as part of the Blaze here. Dave, you and I met how many years ago? Was it 2016 or was it earlier than that? I can't hear Dave. If anybody else can?
No.
Okay, not kidding, Dave. So we had a problem here with our studios. We'll get back to him. When we try to fix the audio here, it is 8:31 on the East Coast now of America, and we've had more closings. This half hour, we've had Texas, Massachusetts, Tennessee, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Maine all closed. We're waiting now for Arkansas. They just closed?
Arkansas is just closed, yes, and we can also give you kind of a quick update here on Virginia, Glenn. Joe Biden is really outperforming where the polls showed him in Virginia in a big way. He's going to wind up with more than half of the total vote. Again, when you're going against four other candidates, that's way above what he was expected to get. Likely going to be about 54% of the vote at the end of Virginia. Huge win.
All right, now we're ready to go to Dave Rubin. Dave is an amazing guy who struck out on his own as an independent, started his own thing with the Rubin Report. It grew and grew and grew and still is growing by massive amounts. And we're thrilled that you would partner with us, Dave, and have your show and your archives here at the Blaze as well. We met in 2016. I was skeptical of you, probably, I don't know which one of us was more skeptical of the other, because you actually were with Sank and all of the people at whatever that network is called. What's that thing called?
The network that need not be named, my friend.
And they are real revolutionaries. They are the people that are really kind of behind the people like AOC and Bernie Sanders. And you were part of them. So what changed in you? And then Play this out. What's happening to the Democratic Party, and what are regular Democrats or people who thought they were Democrats feeling now?
Well, before we do that, Glenn, I do have to ask you, because people always say every time I appear with you, they go, oh, Glenn's your boss, or
No.
they say you must be Glenn's boss. Which way are we doing this again? We flip it every day,
Well,
right?
you fire me and I'll fire you. How's that?
Yeah, it's such silliness. Anyway, yes, I was a lefty. I was a Bernie Sanders supporting far lefty progressive. There are videos of it. I'm not that proud of those videos. And it's funny, people will clip these videos now and put them on Twitter and say, see, Rubin's a sellout. He sold out. And it's like, oh, yeah, I decided to sell out to the conservatives or the libertarians or the classical liberals, and then move to L.A., of all places, to do it, because that'll really get you a lot of friends over here. But yes, look, I was part of that thing, and I think really what put me on the map was I always considered myself a decent liberal. And years ago, say 4 or 5 years ago, pre-Trump, what I thought was good about the progressives is that they seemed like more passionate liberals. They were always screaming. There was a certain righteous indignation to it. There was a lot of passion there. And there's something sort of attractive about that. And what I quickly realized after being around the Young Turks and around the very thin ideas for a couple of years is that after you hear the bumper sticker slogan, free college for everybody, free healthcare for everybody, no military, open borders, whatever the basic stuff is, it all sounds good for about 3 seconds. And then once you think about it for a moment, you wake up very quickly. And especially then, if you do what I do, which is interview people, if you are open to hearing new ideas, well, sit down with an economist like Thomas Sowell, who will really lay out some facts. Sit down with interesting libertarian thinkers, Glenn, like you, or Larry Elder, or sit down with Ben Shapiro or Dennis Prager or Tucker Carlson. These people who Glenn, you and I have some fundamental disagreements on things, but we're more than happy to hash them out. And if anything, I would say we actually revel in that, because that is what the beauty of America is all about.
I do not like sitting with people in my own personal life. If you agree with me on 100%, I'm bored with the conversation quickly. And it's not, I don't like conflict. I hate it. I like people who like to have an interesting intellectual discussion about real things and are open to change. Look, if I'm wrong, how many times have I been wrong? I admit it. I'm wrong. I didn't sell out. I changed. I came to new understanding with new information. I changed my mind. You would have been a sellout if you had stayed and not taken this. And I remember, Dave, the first time that you and I spoke to each other, it was uncomfortable for both of us because we didn't know if either one of us was genuine. I didn't know if you were genuine or you didn't know if I was genuine, and we both took a lot of heat for it. That is what's dynamic.
That first interview, you're right. We had to kind of measure each other up because we came from very, very different worlds. But by taking that step, which, by the way, we're told all the time by mainstream media, we live in the most polarized time ever and everyone hates everybody and all of this stuff. But I find that most people actually do want to learn how to agree to disagree or do want to engage people that are different than them and the rest of it. But what that takes is it takes a little bit of bravery. And I think what we have right now in America is a bit of we have a bravery deficit. And you have to be brave enough to stand up for what you believe in, engage people who think differently, and that's how you'll change. And that's what my book's about. That's why I wanted to do the deal with the Blaze, because I thought I could offer an interesting perspective.
You can.
And that's what we're all doing here. And by the way, that's the track that the country is on. The people are not happy with this endless berating of America and shame of all of the good things about capitalism and freedom. People are sick of it, man. I think people love America. I think we know we can make it better, but you don't burn it down the way the socialists want. You try to move it the best that you can, a little bit this way or a little bit this way. There is so much goodness here, and we're on the cusp of tossing it out the window.
So how do you read polls that show Bernie Sanders a couple of weeks ago, even as early as just a few days ago, Bernie Sanders beating Donald Trump head-to-head? How do you explain that? Is it just Donald Trump is so hated, or is it a love for socialism? I just don't understand the average Democrat, and I'm looking to you to try to explain What's happening in their head?
Well, I'll tell you a couple things here. So first off, the average Democrat, so the average person that sits on the political left, they no longer know what their unifying principle is. So for example, if you took most people on the right, whether they're libertarian or conservative or classical liberal, whatever it is, they basically believe in the Constitution. They basically believe that we should have individual rights and we have good
Correct.
founding documents, and that's how we should be governed.
Right.
People on the left, they sort of believe that, but not that much anymore, by the way, which is why the words like Constitution and freedom and liberty are never spoke at a Democratic debate, right? I mean, every time Biden brings up the Constitution, they all look at him like, yeah, old guy, you know, it's like, we're done with that Constitution thing. So there is no unifying principle on the left other than the state should kind of do everything. So when Bernie says the state should do everything and Elizabeth Warren says, yeah, the state should do everything, but I have a slightly better plan, or then Biden comes in and says, no, we kind of have to do it constitutionally, what they're all fighting over is state, state, state. And I think that basically is what has happened here. So young people who then are indoctrinated through universities and even K through 12 now, and the mainstream media, who are indoctrinated that the state comes before everything and that your problems are not your problems, they're the state's problems. And they don't talk about individual rights. They don't talk about self-reliance and things like that. They've now created a collection of people that have almost nothing to do with each other. So AOC, for example, who I think gets everything politically as wrong as you could possibly get it, she has got one thing right over the past couple months, which is she said in effect that Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden should not be in the same political party. And I think she's right.
Yeah.
Let the socialists have their party. But Bernie's running an insurgency, a socialist insurgency in the Democratic Party. Now, you may not like the ideas of whatever the old Democratic Party was. I kind of can't believe that I was part of it myself. But let them, but they do deserve a party, whatever that, you know, if there's any remaining blue dog Democrats, something like that. But let the socialists do their thing. But instead, they've infected the host. And I truly think this is the end of the Democratic Party as we know it, no matter what happens at this point.
So I described today as CNN as the network of the established Democratic Party that plays, you know, a tune once in a while for the socialists and all of the radicals. But they're the establishment network using the socialists, where MSNBC is the revolutionary network that tolerates the establishment. And, you know, with what I saw with Chris Matthews, who I haven't agreed with Chris Matthews on anything probably since, I don't even know, I wasn't even born in 1941, but that may have been the last time. But what happened to him was, I believe, a program that is happening in MSNBC. They're doing a cleansing of anybody who will not get on board with the revolution. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty solid diagnosis. I would go one step further and say that it's not just that he's not getting on board the full socialist agenda of the new Democrats or whatever you want to call them. It's that he's not fully woke. And what I mean by that is he's not fully on board identity politics. He's actually, for all the differences that I too have with him, he is not on board the idea that we should be looking at people through the color of their skin or their sexuality or their gender or those other things. That is now an integral, inseparable part of what leftism is. And you cannot have a guy like that pushing back. I mean, there's a reason that somebody like me gets as much hate as I get for somebody that I think is given pretty moderate stuff. I try not to attack people. I talk about ideas and the rest of it. The reason I get a lot of hate, or the reason that Candace Owens, I know you just sat down with her a few days ago, the reason that she gets as much hate as she does is the left can't have somebody walk away. They can't let somebody be seen as free.
Correct.
So if they see a black woman, and that's, by the way, all they see Candace as, it has nothing to do with her ideas. She's black, she's supposed to be a Democrat. You take a gay person, he's supposed to be a Democrat. You take a woman, she's supposed to be a Democrat. And that is the sort of ridiculousness of collectivism, which is the core tenet of leftism. You know, you can't say, I'm for black people. You're not going to believe this, but black people have a varying group of opinions. And gay people think all sorts of different things. So, and that's why they're so angry when somebody walks. They can't have you walking and be safe.
So how did the magic trick work with Donald Trump, who I don't think has a homophobic bone in his body? He had Peter Thiel speak at the Republican convention, first openly gay man to do that. There's no problem. I think he just appointed the first gay was a cabinet member.
Richard Grenell was our ambassador to Germany, who was the temporary head of national intelligence. So he's openly gay.
How is it that all of a sudden gay people are supposed to hate this president? And I have heard from these organizations, they all say he's the worst, he's the most homophobic. Where have you seen this? Where?
Well, I can tell you a couple of things here, Glenn, and I'll tell you a story that's the first time I've ever said it publicly. I've been holding this for quite some time, but this feels like the right time to tell you. Well, first off, let's remember that Donald Trump was the first ever president that on his first term went in for gay marriage.
Yes.
Okay? Barack Obama did not, right? So let's just remember that. But now I'll tell you something. Right before Christmas, I was speaking at Turning Point at the Student Action Summit. I think you spoke there the day before I did. And I spoke, and that afternoon I bumped into Trump Jr. We've become friendly. He said to me, "You want to have dinner at Mar-a-Lago tonight?" I said, "Yes, I do." And I went with my husband, David. It was Jr. and his girlfriend, Kimberly Guilfoyle. And David and I were sitting at a four-top table, and we're sitting right next to President Trump. And at the end of the meal, Jr. says to me, "Hey, do you want to meet my dad?" We walk over to Trump. He's looking, this is 2 or 3 days after they announced impeachment. He has no tie on. He looks relaxed. He's having fun. And Junior says to him, "Hey, Dad, I want you to meet Dave Rubin. He's got this great podcast, blah, blah, blah." Trump looks at me. He goes, I kind of recognize you. I kind of recognize you. He said, "Oh, well, I'm on Tucker Carlson a lot." He goes, "Oh, that's it." And then he turns to David, my husband, who's standing next to me, and he says, "Who are you?" And David says, "Oh, well, I'm his husband." And he goes, "Husband? I want to stand up and shake your hands." He stands up, he shakes both of our hands, and he says, "I just want you guys to know, I don't care." He actually used the expletive there. He goes, "I don't give a bleep. And I don't think anyone else does, and I don't think they have for 20 years. Then he introduced us to Melania. David and Melania totally hit it off. And I spent about 10 minutes with him, and the guy couldn't have been nicer. He didn't ask me anything about being gay. We talked about politics. We talked a little about Bloomberg.
Do people ask you about being gay? What's it like to be gay? I mean, it sounds like a Larry King question.
Yeah. Well, the lefties, when I was with the lefties, they were obsessed with it because that's how they grade you as a human. That's how they view you as a human. But he totally, we talked politics and that was it. So if this guy is a homophobe, then he's just not doing it well.
One last question before we go to a new delegate count. You said a minute ago that you think this is the end of the Democratic Party. Is that true with whoever becomes the delegate or the nominee?
Well, the nominee. Well, look at it this way. So let's assume right now that the way this thing is tracking is that it's going to be Biden, right? Well, a vote for Biden. Now, first off, it's a vote for the old school Democrats. The socialists and the progressives, whatever you want to call them, they will not tolerate this. They are telling you that they want to burn everything down. Well,
so
guess
Dave,
what? I burn down.
There were two stories. That's what I said in my CPAC speech. I said these are revolutionaries, and they are telling you they are revolutionaries that will burn Milwaukee to the ground. They're serious. They are Marxist, Leninist revolutionaries. And who was it? There were two articles that came out this weekend said that that's lie. You no proof of that or anything else. They're saying it. How is it nobody is picking up on this? Because I think we're headed for real trouble this summer.
Well, the answer to that question is that there's no left that's too far left for the left, while the right is actually pretty good at not going too far right. When you find some sort of KKK thing or something that they say is far right, the conservatives all roundly condemn it. The left, there is no left that is too far. So whoever comes after Bernie, by the way, is going to be much worse than Bernie. But the key part is this, that let's say it is Biden. The sad truth about Biden, and I don't mean this to be glib, I don't mean this to be jokey or anything, is that at his age, the guy is having major cognitive problems. We all know it, and nobody's talking about it. So everyone that votes for Biden, and by the way, I'm in California. I voted for Biden today just as a counter vote to Sanders. And I'm not a Democrat, I'm an independent. But the issue is that if you vote for Joe Biden in the national election, you have to understand you are most likely voting for his VP.
I agree.
So if the progressives extract the VP from him, whatever that means, AOC or Warren or Bernie or whatever that means, then you should know that you are not voting for some old school Democrat. You are actually voting for one of these socialists. I mean, that's just the uncomfortable truth that we all have to come around to.
You can tell the hatred for Joe Biden or Donald Trump by Joe Biden, his rush to the top of the polls here recently, when he could just string a few words together. He is clearly, I thought, honestly, and like you, I felt bad for him. I don't like Joe Biden. I think he's done some really bad things. I don't like his policies, but I don't want to see the man humiliated, and I don't have a vendetta against him. And I was watching him in that debate, and I thought, will somebody in his family please step up and say, Dad, you're wrecking your memory. You gotta step out of this.
Glenn, we've all seen this sort of thing, right? We've all seen it with grandparents or parents, where they struggle then to finish the sentence. They don't know what they're saying. He's dealing with some of that right now. It's sad and it's depressing, but unless we confront it, then what comes behind that, or the political machinery behind that, is actually very scary. So the Democrats are in a big mess right now.
Who do you think? Donald Trump says he wants to run against Bernie Sanders, and I think that's because of the long-term damage that would do, and they'd lose the House. But do you see, which one would you rather have Trump run against for an easier win? And do you see Biden having a chance in his mental condition, I think, maybe I'm wrong, being able to win in debates against Donald Trump?
Yeah, well, look, the Bernie one, I know you're a Star Wars guy, so I'll make a Star Wars reference. The Bernie one brings the ultimate battle between the Sith and the Jedi, right?
Yes,
it's like, let's get everything out of the way. Let's do socialism versus capitalism. Game on, let's do it.
I'd love that.
I think that crushes, I think that crushes the socialists, because Americans are proud to be American. Americans are capitalists. We love freedom. We love liberty, all of those things. The Biden thing, can he actually do it? I don't think so, and that's why I'm saying if you vote for Biden, if you love the Democrats and you vote for Joe Biden because you believe he's the last thing that can stop Bernie Sanders, what you have to know is you most likely are not voting for Joe Biden. It's just a sad truth. That's it. I take no pleasure in that.
Let me just ask you before you go promote your show, who do you have on, or who have you had on recently that you just thought is just a dynamic conversation that you've had or are about to have?
You know what? I'll tell you one that I taped this morning that is totally different than just the political stuff that you and I do all the time. I had a guy by the name of Max Lugavere on, who wrote a book called The Genius Life. And we did a whole show today on the types of foods you should eat, habits that you should avoid. I mean, things as simple as avoiding bright lights before you go to bed, how much sleep you should get, how much water you should drink, things that we all kind of know, but, we all get caught in politics, we get caught in our work, we get caught in our family, we get caught on television, whatever it is we're doing. And it was a nice little escape from all of this, and just a little reminder that, we could eat a little bit better, we could do a little more exercise, we could take care of ourselves a little bit better. And I think you got to have those breaks, especially when you do what we do, where it starts feeling like an endless rat race all the time.
Well, I hope you stay safe from the coronavirus, because, you're close to
I'm pretty sure I caught it at the booth this morning.
I bet. Thank you so much, Dave. You and me see more of Dave Rubin. The Dave Rubin Show is real. If you've not seen the Dave Rubin Report, you need to. And you can find it on BlazeTV.com. BlazeTV.com. If you are not a subscriber yet, please subscribe. You can do that by using the promo Super2. That's TUE, or just Super, one of the two. Do that now. BlazeTV.com. All right, Stu, where have we come here in the last few minutes? Are you ready to call some more states?
We're not ready to call any more states yet. We can give you some updates, though, as we go. If you see these 3 states here that Biden has won, Virginia, North Carolina, Alabama, in those races, Joe Biden spent about $700,000 in total advertising. Michael Bloomberg spent over $43 million, over 50 times what Biden spent, and yet Biden is going to win all 3 of the states, which is kind of a big deal. This is completely disproving the left-wing narrative that you can buy elections. You obviously can't. Tom Steyer got no delegates. Bloomberg picked up American Samoa. I guess you can buy the American Samoa election if that's what they meant this whole time. It's my bad. I want to give you this little update over here, which is a delegate count. What we're kind of doing as we go through the night is updating the delegate count. This is not where they are right this second. This is where we're projecting they will be after Super Tuesday. So you won't see these numbers really, come in until California fully comes in, which will be probably a couple of days. But right now we have Biden with a slight lead after all these races settle. What you're seeing here, obviously, is a two-person race, right? Bloomberg and Warren have both underperformed what a lot of their polling was. A lot of the Bloomberg stuff is going over to Biden. Honestly, it seems like the Warren stuff's going over to Biden, too. It's been a really good night for Biden early. The two things about that are interesting about the Biden part of this so far, these things tend to develop narratives early on. So you start out at the beginning of the night, Biden's winning all these states, everyone's watching, right? There's watching Biden win, Biden win. The end of the night, when California rolls in, if Sanders does as well as he's expected to do there, he'll come back and pick up a lot of delegates and get very close to Biden. And by that time, though, people might be in bed. So the perception of this race right now is, I think, going to be a strong Biden night. It looks like it is. And I will say, coming into this, we did not think that, the general consensus was that Sanders would still lead in the delegate count after Super Tuesday. That was the general consensus. I think that's switching. I think there's a good chance after this, the way Biden's performed early in these states, there's a chance that he's leading the delegate count.
I wonder, I told you earlier, if you joined us right at 8 o'clock Eastern time, I talked about what I heard from the New York Times, the Daily, this morning, where they were talking to some people in Virginia. One guy in particular said, I'm going to wait in Virginia to vote very late. I want to see if I can see any kind of indication from exit polling on who is doing better. If it's all going to Sanders, then I'll throw my vote behind Sanders, but I really want Biden. And if he has a chance, I'll go out and vote for Biden. And I wonder if that's not happening in some of these states out west. It is. I remember I grew up in the Washington state, and I remember by the time it got to us, even on election day, it was kind of like, why am I going out and vote? If it was not close, many times you were like, I'm kind of left out of this.
Yeah, and two, there's something to do with just the philosophy of the parties here, too, where Democrats obviously lean towards collectivism in a lot of ways. And the Democrats coming out and saying very clearly, Pete Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Harry Reid, all these, Beto even, all coming to the aid of Biden at the last minute signals, hey, as a group, this is where we're going. I think that would backfire, honestly, with Republicans in a lot of ways, and it kind of did in 2016. A lot of party figures went to Rubio first, then Cruz, then to Kasich, and they just said, no, don't go this way. Now, who knows if they all had united and gone one way, maybe that would have affected it.
I don't know.
But I think, honestly, I think Republicans are more individualist. They get more annoyed by the fact that the party would try to tell them how to vote, and they may actually go the other way. We haven't seen that with the Democrats. So far, this is a dream come true for Joe Biden. Only 2 weeks ago, it looked like he was completely out of the race. He finishes a dismal second place, about as bad as you can do in second place in Nevada. And ever since then, he's been blowing everybody out. I will say, we're still mostly only showing strength for Biden in the South. So there's still a question as to whether that will expand to the West, which comes up later on, as polls are closing here in about 4 minutes, and also to the Northeast. So far, we have not seen, Maine is very close right now. Massachusetts is close right now. And states like Oklahoma are still pretty close.
Massachusetts is close between Biden and Sanders? Is Warren even in play in her own home?
Yeah, she's in play right now. Very early, still only about 6% of the vote is in. 29% for Biden, 29% for Sanders, and 27% for Warren. So they'll all get delegates there for sure.
All right, we've got about 3 minutes to the top of the hour. Let me go back over to the panel and Sarah.
Thanks, Glenn. We've got some more social media questions that I'd like to get your thoughts on, gentlemen. And remember, you guys, you can be tweeting us your questions using the hashtag BlazeTV Super Tues. We just left out day because we're hip like that. So BlazeTV Super Tues, let us know what your questions are. We will do our best to answer them. The Pickled Squirrel wants to know, when will, I think that she or he listens to you, Chad. When will Pocahontas' bribery check from the DNC clear? She has to drop out sometime, obviously said in jest, but the larger point, what is Elizabeth Warren still doing in this thing?
I think that just potentially the strategy for Sacagawea is that she's going to stay in long enough to potentially maybe get a VP nod from Biden.
Yeah.
You alluded to it earlier. He's got to have that progressive vote if he becomes the nominee. Of course, that's why he's pandering to a guy like Beto. Mm-hmm. And so we'll see what happens with this thing. She spoke at an event earlier tonight in California where she said that even though Biden's been in for a long time and she appreciates his service, he's not the guy for this time, which sort of makes me think she could be leaning, well, you know she's progressive, but potentially leaning towards a support of Sanders.
Giancarlo, what do you think?
Well, I think what might end up happening is that you're going to see Elizabeth Warren going to the convention with these local delegates. She's got to decide what she's going to do with them. The problem for her is that she's SOL no matter what, because if she gives them to Joe Biden, it completely discredits her narrative as a progressive champion, right? If she gives it to Bernie Sanders, the establishment of the Democratic Party is going to hate her. So she is really, I think, the big loser in this race, right? Where I think 2020 is going to be the year where we saw Elizabeth Warren's career be entirely redefined.
Let's go to one more question. For the love of my six wants to know, if Senator Sanders wins the primary but loses the general election, do you think the streets will still burn? Chad, what do you think?
I think to some degree there's going to be an element of uprising, but to that degree I don't think so.
I mean, he had his moment, right?
I mean,
and he didn't get it.
You still got to go out. But I mean, we've seen crazy things happen in the last 3 years. I don't foresee why it would change now.
Yeah, Giancarlo.
Communists never think that they've actually lost an election, so they're going to throw up all sorts of accusations of fraud. So I wouldn't be surprised to see massive protests.
Yeah.
Well, that is amazing, Giancarlo, because on tomorrow's broadcast, tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern is the Wednesday night special, and we are talking about that very thing. And we go into the communist revolutionary goal of convincing you that everything was bad and there is nothing that you can trust when it comes to your vote. That's tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. We have some really important information for you. Hopefully some breaking news in a good way also on tomorrow night's show. You can watch that on Blaze TV. We'll give you a little peek of that here in just a second. Also, could I ask the panel to do something for me and just do some research here and look, see if you can find anybody that was having to see if there was anyone who might have hesitated to go out, or how the polls were operating in places like Washington State, where we've had now 6 deaths from the coronavirus. I've heard that there are some polling booths where they actually took the paper ballots out to the cars and allowed people to fill them out in their cars, and then with their rubber gloves took those back. That doesn't sound very good. But can you look into that and see if coronavirus has played in any way, shape, or form a role in any state for Super Tuesday? Sure. All right, it is 9:01 in the east of America.
Some folks at the big tech companies, Google in particular, they call Election Day in 2016, they call that Armageddon Day. And they've been determined since that day. We know this from leaked videos. We know this from whistleblowers. Right. They have been determined from that day forward to make sure that not only that Trump is not reelected, but that the Democrats sweep the country.
There it is. We have more on that in just a few minutes. I want you to hear his full interview that will happen on tomorrow. All right. This is our Super Tuesday coverage 2020 on Blaze TV, BlazeTV.com, also on our Blaze TV YouTube and Facebook page. Thank you so much for watching us. You can hashtag us and send in your questions. Hashtag Blaze TV Super Tues. And any questions or anything else you have. We're about to go in now, 8:02 in the east. And we will go over the new closings and any new numbers as we start hour number 2 of our Super Tuesday broadcast. Mr. Burguiere, Stu Burguiere,
yes,
who is our numbers guy. He is He loves to crunch numbers. He loves statistics and is naturally gravitated to anything that has to do with the election. Give us an overview of what we're looking at tonight, what you think is coming. What is 538 saying? Has that changed today?
Yeah, it's been a positive for Biden. Biden has outperformed expectations in almost every single category. Again, there hasn't been much from the West, and there hasn't been much from the Northeast yet. It looks like he's going to win Tennessee. It's still too early to call the state, but looks like he's going to win there. He's outperforming, I would say, expectations so far in Maine, which is a state that Bernie Sanders did very well in last time. Obviously, a neighboring state to him as well. We just had a couple of closings here. Texas finally is fully now closed. We'll start getting results in Texas, which is probably the bellwether of the entire night. If Bernie Sanders can't win Texas, I would say it was supposed to be a 50-50 state coming into this. If Biden can blow him out there, that's another big statement. Colorado, which is Bernie is favored. Minnesota, Bernie is favored as well. Again, he starts knocking off states like that. It's showing a bigger night than we even expected for Biden. So far, Biden comes into this thing. He wants to really dominate the South. He's been able to do that. He's been able to beat expectations pretty much across the board so far. Really, the only good news so far for anybody else is in Vermont for Bernie Sanders, where he wins, but he wins with likely a lesser percentage than Joe Biden wins in Virginia, which is completely unheard of. Nowhere near what we thought was actually going to happen. And then, of course, obviously the huge news for Michael Bloomberg's campaign. He's spent about $400 million. He is going to win American Samoa. We can confirm that right now. 175 votes was what he did there. Tulsi Gabbard coming in second. It's interesting because I would love to see what the dollars spent per vote was for Michael Bloomberg in American Samoa. I'll give you a couple of other, briefly looking at where we are as far as the vote goes. Alabama, a pretty easy state for Biden. We knew he was going to win there coming in. Virginia, as I said, over 50% for Biden. That was supposed to be a relatively close state, though Biden was favored. North Carolina, another close one. Was supposed to be something where you were going to see a tight battle for first place. Was called pretty early for Joe Biden. There you will see one interesting thing where Sanders and Bloomberg will likely stay above that 15%, which will cut down the win for Biden in North Carolina. We're going to go over to Glenn Beck now for more.
Okay. The polls have now closed officially all of Texas. El Paso just closed a few minutes ago. Minnesota is now closed. Colorado is closed, and the numbers should start piling in. We'll have those, and Stu will interrupt us at the next possible place where we get some numbers and some calls. I want to go to our Washington, D.C. studios for Jon Miller. Jon Miller, welcome to the program. You do the White House brief.
Glenn, how you doing?
Very good on Blaze TV. What do you see happening tonight? What's your take?
Well, tonight I see everything that I predicted from the beginning going absolutely wrong. So I said that Biden, there was no... I'm Washington, D.C.'s worst pundit. But, I learned from the 2016 pundits, and that's before I became a highly respected pundit in my own right, that you just say it with confidence, and you say it over and over again. It doesn't matter how wrong you are, because no one remembers the next election cycle.
Well, I will tell you this. Bill O'Reilly had been saying that Joe Biden would be the nominee forever. And 2 weeks ago, he said Biden is over. And now, we're going to have to rib him here in a few minutes. He's going to be coming on, I think, either this hour or later next hour. And it looks like he was right before he was wrong.
You're right. He should have never retracted it. That was his mistake.
This is the most bizarre primary I've ever seen, even with the Republicans under Trump, which was very unusual. Trump was steady the whole time. Where Biden, there seemed to be a love affair. Then they fell out of love with him. Nobody thought the Democrats would fall in love with Bernie Sanders. All of a sudden, he was the guy. I thought we were going to have a socialist nominee. We still might. But I thought we were going to have a socialist nominee. There was no chance Biden was going to catch up. Bloomberg is unlikable. Now they're back to Biden.
Right, and as early as last week, that seemed that would be the case. We were talking, is the Democrat side really going to go and elect a socialist? And we thought they were. I don't think we thought that the Democrat Party was going to be stupid enough to nominate someone like Biden again. I kind of see Biden as the Hillary Clinton of this election in the sense that he's not exactly electable. I don't think there's any shot in hell that Biden, of course, here I am making predictions again, but I don't think there's any shot in hell that Biden beats Trump. But you have to give it to the party for trying their shenanigans again. Like, here they come and try to steal the nomination again from Bernie, which I absolutely think is what is happening. I don't think any of us predicted the whole Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and then you get Beto endorsing him. I don't think anyone saw that happening, and I don't think anyone saw the Democrat Party doing its same games again and trying to take the nomination away from Bernie. So it is fascinating. Like you said, Trump was was number one for the entire primary. Here, it's a roller coaster, and even tonight, we don't know what's going to happen.
It is shoe shopping with a woman. It really is. They'll try on every shoe, and then they either leave without a shoe, or they come back to the shoe that they wore the first time that they were trying on shoes. John, you worked for me when we were up in New York, and I was on Fox. You have been a producer, a writer, a researcher. You were my assistant for a while. You're one of the smartest guys that I know. You graduated, with very good grades from Columbia.
Yeah, but no honors because of you.
I know. Well, that's your fault. I think just to shut them down, you called me Martin Luther King at one point in the class.
I did. That is absolutely accurate.
Yeah,
yes.
Not a smart thing.
But that didn't do me any favors.
Yeah, but you are younger. You've been in with the radicals. You've seen them. Explain to America what the Democrats who are just like, oh, Bernie Sanders, he's lovable. He's like Larry Sanders. Explain who the people around him are and what you think might happen if the shenanigans are perceived to even happen with Joe Biden.
I don't think that they're. I don't think that they are lovable. I don't think that they are lovable. I don't think they're trying to be lovable. I think that they are radicals who truly believe in Bernie Sanders' message. And that is precisely why Bernie Sanders is, except for tonight, which we'll see what happens, but it is until this point why Bernie Sanders did so well and why he was actually so popular. It's because the people who truly believe in the things that Bernie Sanders believes and the radicalism that he believes, the fact that everyone should get free health care, including illegal immigrants, and stuff like the wealth tax. I mean, these are true believers. And all of these other goofballs who came onto the Democrat primary stage, like Kamala and even Elizabeth Warren, who I'll get to in a second, but all of these people who came on the stage and kind of tried to parrot the Bernie Sanders talking points, the true believers, the people I went to college with, all of these people honestly believe in his message and know that he is the one true believer of that message. And that is why they ultimately flock to him and not any of those other people, Booker included. I forgot about him, because he's a true believer and he actually means what he says. He actually went to the Soviet Union for his honeymoon. He actually, walks the walk and talks the talk.
He's not backing down.
And I think that, right, and I think that Elizabeth Warren, it's fascinating what you see with Elizabeth Warren here, because she says on the debate stage, I'm actually a capitalist, and to a certain extent she really is, right? To a certain extent she actually has made a lot of money for herself, more money. She's worth 11 million, Bernie's worth a measly something like 2 million. What even is that? She actually has made money for herself, and there's a reason why she's in the race, right? Why is she still not dropping out, even though she's, not even she's not even interested in Super Tuesday? She's in Michigan. She's in Detroit right now, not even focused on Super Tuesday. But she is taking votes away still from Bernie Sanders. And that does the progressives, that does the establishment wing of the parties. That does their bidding, right? Because she is still getting votes to Biden by taking them away from Bernie. And then you've got Buttigieg and Klobuchar and all of those people actually, right, and Beto funneling votes to Biden. So she's working for the establishment wing still. So and she admits it on the debate stage.
Can we please play the Pocahontas, the Elizabeth Warren theme? Because I don't think she's ever going to. We're not calling a state for her. And while we're here talking about her and diversity, do we have the Elizabeth Warren? There it is. There it is. Turn it up just a little bit so we can really get into it.
Now I feel the mood.
Yeah, don't you? So me smoke 'em one pump. with Elizabeth Warren, a white woman, dare I say?
No.
Bernie
No,
Sanders,
Navajo.
a white man, Joe Biden, and Michael Bloomberg. This is the party of diversity, John?
Yeah. I don't see why that's so hard for you to see.
Really? I mean, they have spent the last 12 years telling us how bad white people are, how you can't trust white people, how white people have far too much power, and yet everybody is a white millionaire or billionaire. And strangely, all made their money in government somehow or other.
Right. And they've kicked to the curb all of the minorities. And, you know, I don't care, and I don't think you do either, Glenn, and I don't think really anyone at this point does. But it's just so funny to look at the party. And, you know, it's just a troll because, you know, at the end of the day, they still did elect the first, half-black president. But this is all they talk about.
Well, no,
all
the
they
first
talk
black
about is the
president was
intersectionality ladder.
Bill Clinton, but...
Yes, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the party that only talks about, you know, intersectionality and how important it is, and how white men are evil. In fact, the Biden, one of the, the presumptive front runner yet again, had to go on stage. I don't remember which group he was talking to, and he was saying, you know, it is white men and white men's evil culture that we have to atone for because they are so evil. So it's just, you know, if you're going to hold them to their own standard, I do think it's ironic. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's just it's an old talking point, and nobody cares. Exactly.
Let me play, if we have it. I played it on radio today, and I don't know if we have it in the control room, but there was a piece from Joe Biden where he was talking about the Declaration of Independence. This came out today, and there's an argument on, is this guy going senile, or was he messed up because he realized, all men, I better add women, and the next line is about God. Watch.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
Yeah. Okay, so is that grandpa, when you're starting to take the keys away from grandpa, is that like, oh dear, he can't drive anymore? Or is that just him realizing, oh crap, I shouldn't say this because the Declaration of Independence won't go over well because it's got God and men in it?
Right, has been endowed by their creator, by her and by Oprah.
Yeah.
Not really sure which one.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think it's a little bit of both. Right. I mean, there's no doubt. And every time I start to go in on Joe Biden and make fun of him, I have to remember this. I think the guy truly is going senile. You know, he's in Vermont and he's saying, "I love the great people of New Hampshire." He's talking about he doesn't know who he's talking to. He can't remember words or phrases. I mean, there was that really uncomfortable thing where he said, you know, vote for Joe for Senate, and then there was like, you know, a good 10 seconds of him just sitting there fumbling over what just sounded like gibberish. So I honestly think that he is going senile, and so, I mean, that's not something I do like to make fun of. But I think that he's also, you know, has that woke streak to him, and he's trying to be woke. And I think when you put all of that in a blender together, when you put the senility in the blender with the I'm trying to be woke and trying to rewrite the Declaration, I mean, it's hard enough to remember quotes on the spot as it is. When you try to rewrite them in real time and change them to be woke and you're going senile, I think that's when you get the disastrous, oh, you know the thing, you know it, and that's how that happens.
It's bad. It's bad. Thank you very much, Jon Miller from the White House Brief, which you can see here on Blaze TV. When is your show on, John?
It's on at the time. No,
I know.
We air it at different times.
Everything's a download. Yeah, so just download.
Yeah, it's a download. So just go to Blaze TV. You can find it there. Go to my YouTube channel, Jon Miller, YouTube/Jon Miller, no H, and you can find it. And we upload episodes every day.
Just so you know, thank you very much, John. Just so you know, we are going back and we've had a lot of people say, well, I liked your linear 24-hour programming that you did. We got out of cable news because that's a thing of the past. And we are going back to linear. However, you can watch it on demand or you can watch it in the 24-hour stream. And you can watch that all on the brand new Blaze TV app. And make sure you join us, BlazeTV.com. And Super Tuesday, you just go super is the promo code and you'll save 20%. Do I sound like Joe Biden yet? Sorry, I have people talking in my ear. I guess we are calling another state.
Yeah, you know the thing, Glenn. That's how you do it. Just whenever you're not sure to say you know the thing, people will know.
Okay.
Yeah, we could actually call another state. This one again for Joe Biden, Tennessee, 64 delegates. He will win that state. It's not a blowout state. He's gonna be close to about half the vote though, and it's again another state where he's outperforming where he wants to be. But again, it's telling us the same story, kind of from the same region, and he's outperformed very much in that region. Whether this continues in the other regions is still the open question for this evening. Sanders has a couple of states, Oklahoma, Colorado, that he was favored to win. He won both in 2016.
Oklahoma is not going towards. No, the three wise men are moving a little closer to my desk. That's trouble.
Oh, and by the way, if these are the only delegates that Bloomberg gets, he has now spent $100 million per delegate.
Oh, great. Oh, that's not that bad. That's not a bad rate.
Bargain, really.
Stu, can you tell me tell me when these are shakeups, even if it's just not as close as it should have been? How many of these states are actually in play and moving towards Biden away from Sanders as to what was projected, by 538.com or any of these other really solid pollsters?
As of this moment, that's the story of the night.
All of them are moving?
I would say, generally speaking, a pattern has developed where, Virginia is supposed to be a relatively close state. It's a blowout. North Carolina is supposed to be pretty close. Biden wins it fairly easily. A state like let's see, Virginia, or Tennessee, excuse me, is supposed to be a little closer than it is so far. Oklahoma was a state that Sanders won against Clinton in 2016.
Isn't that Warren's home state?
Well, kind of. I mean,
back in the Native American days.
Yeah, technically she's from a territory, but yeah.
Right.
She is, she has a tie to that. I don't know how much you take from that, really. But she was not really all that competitive. But Biden there are some services that are already calling Oklahoma for Biden. And if that happens, that's I would say is one that's a little bit against expectations. Colorado will be an interesting one as well. Colorado was a caucus state last time. This time they're a primary. So it's kind of a different dynamic. Sanders did win there last time. He's favored to win tonight. If he were to lose that to Biden, that would be pretty significant.
Yeah, that would be significant to lose that to Biden, because that has turned a very blue territory.
Yeah, and if you see here, I don't know if you remember this, Glenn, but these were a lot closer last time we checked in on our delegate estimate. Now Biden's opened up about a 22 delegate lead in our final projections for Super Tuesday, which means he's exceeding expectations. To state it one more time, we came on an hour after these initial results first came out. For the lead up to this, if you would have asked a week or two ago, Bernie would have had a big lead in this number. If you would have asked before tonight started, it would have been Bernie with a lead by a little bit. Now Biden is up by 22 delegates. That's a very close race still, but it is clearly a two-person race. The third and the fourth people in this race, Warren and Bloomberg. Honestly, the biggest question of tonight was how are they going to perform? Was Bloomberg going to hold up? Was he going to be able to get a bunch of delegates? Was Warren going to be able to do anything? They're going to get their delegates. They're not necessarily going to be at zero, but it's underwhelming. People have moved to the top two. People are identifying this race as a two-person race, and so that does look like where we are at the moment.
One last thing, and then I want to go to the panel. When you're looking at these numbers, is there any way, because just 3 weeks ago, there was a chance that Biden could have been out on Super Tuesday, that this would have been his last round. He would have dropped out after Super Tuesday.
South Carolina, if he would have lost South Carolina, he would have been out.
Yeah, I think so. And so it would have been very different. People are now, 538 just a week ago was saying it's about a 70% chance of a brokered convention, which is anything can happen, and a lot of Molotov cocktails will be thrown back. What number does Biden have to get to tonight or in the next couple of weeks that will close that? Or is there a line that if he doesn't pass, it's just not going to happen? We're going to a brokered convention. Do you know?
Well, a lot of it has to do with a couple things. One, if Bloomberg and Warren stay in, The longer they stay in, the higher chance we have for a brokered convention. Give you an example of that, like a state like North Carolina right now. This is not the final results, but shows 35% for Biden, 23% for Sanders, and 16% for Bloomberg. You know, Bloomberg out of that race gives a much higher delegate total to Biden for winning. It was like the example we started the show with. The same thing we're seeing in Colorado right now, very early again, but it's 36% for Sanders, 21% for Biden, 24% for Bloomberg, and 16% for Warren. So a win in Colorado under that arrangement where everyone's over 15% is much less valuable to Sanders, and that will mean that he can't get across that barrier. The bottom line is, like, I think right now, and as I'm checking, 538, you mentioned they were about 70%. I think it was mid-60s earlier today. They're saying right now 61% chance of a brokered convention. That is the most likely outcome, particularly if someone like Mike Bloomberg stays in the race. If he continues to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to try to stay in this race and actually win votes, it's just going to be difficult for these two candidates. They're going to keep beating up on each other. The delegate wins are not going to be major delegate wins, kind of like we saw with Clinton and Sanders last time. And they can just fight back and forth. And, a war for sort of territory there does not work into a clean win for either one of the two leading Democrats. And that is where we are. This is a Sanders and Biden race right now, unless you want to go crazy and say when they go to the convention, Oprah's going to come out of the ceiling and take the candidacy. If you're not going into that direction, this is a Sanders-Biden race.
All right. Thank you very much, Stu. We're back with the panel, and we've just brought Rob Eno in, who is with the Blaze, and he really watches media.
Right.
And God bless you for watching it so we didn't have to. How do you do it?
You got to. It makes you want to die, but a little bit inside. But
lots of alcohol.
It's something to do. Lots of alcohol.
Yeah.
But it's something you got to do.
First of all, let's address the question that I had for you. How did coronavirus affect anything? Did it suppress anyone, especially like in Washington State? Did people stay home? Some places the polls were open, but they were coming out to your car to hand you the paper, so you didn't have to go in. If you're elderly and you're in Washington State, I would imagine that would concern me going to the polls. You saw an exit poll.
I saw exit polling, Edison Research, as reported by Reuters. Over 70% in 4 states that they went to, Texas, North Carolina, Virginia, and California, said that coronavirus had a say in who they voted for and why they came out to the polls. So I think they were, which is kind of weird. Bizarre. Yeah, I mean, they didn't say, I didn't see the breakdown of who they voted for because of it, but 78% said that, or over 70%, between like 72 and 78% said that it had some bearing on how they voted.
That is interesting.
Just people, I mean, people are scared of it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's because
they
have no idea what it is.
So what are you seeing happening in the media right now?
I'm seeing a lot of people, I think, relieved that Bernie Sanders isn't going to be the nominee, because I think the media...
Isn't it a little early to call that?
I think that they think that Joe's momentum, maybe it's early to call it, he's not going to be the nominee, but I mean, Biden's winning Massachusetts because right now, we'll see what happens, because Elizabeth Warren stayed in the race playing the Kasich role of 2016 for the Democrats, which is, I think, what she's going to do. And Biden is in the lead in Massachusetts right now. A week ago, you would have been called crazy to say that. But if you look at Bernie and Warren's number, who are going after the same voters, the really hard left, Sanders probably would have won Massachusetts. So I think you're seeing... Did
Sanders have a really bad night in the debate before South Carolina? Or did... So people looked at him and went, oh, man, he's a revolutionary. I don't want that. I don't want to defend Cuba and Castro. Or did Biden have some sort of resurrection where people looked at him and went, oh, he's great. I think he's fine.
I think South Carolina, I didn't think it was going to happen, right? I think there were like 2 days left, right? I didn't think South Carolina was going to have that much of an effect because of early voting and things like that. But it seems like it did. And maybe the polling was wrong, and maybe the conventional wisdom was wrong, and Biden was always going to win the South, which is where you're seeing him. Now, Colorado, Sanders is winning. We don't know in Texas. And those sorts of things. But I think the media is relieved by that, because I think the media truly knows that if Sanders is the nominee, they get 4 more years of Trump almost guaranteed.
I said earlier today that I think that what happened to Chris Matthews at MSNBC it was shameful. I don't like Chris Matthews, you know, his point of view, et cetera. But he's been a broadcaster forever. He's been an American institution in some ways, and they threw him out because I think this is a program or a cleansing. MSNBC is the revolutionary channel, where CNN is the establishment Democratic channel.
Absolutely right.
So do you think that's what happened? And
I think that's what happened with Matthews exactly. I mean, 30 years there's been people talking about the misogyny of Chris Matthews, you know, in the undercurrents, and there's been time after time after time, even after the Me Too moment, where they could have gotten rid of him. But it's because of the Sanders thing is why they got rid of him. It's completely blatant. You know, they made him go on air and apologize for telling the truth about what he felt after Sanders won in Nevada.
Yeah. And I think that was a reasonable thing. I mean, inflammatory, yes, but a reasonable thing to think if you are against a socialist revolutionary.
Yeah, more people died from socialism than ever died because of Nazis.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right. Thank you so much. We're going to go back to Stu, who's making a call now for Oklahoma. And I guess we need the Biden theme song, which people think that he's, you know, old-timey, but he is not. He is on the cutting edge. Here's the Biden theme song.
I just want to thank you for building the drama of that moment by saying who won before I said it. Here comes Oklahoma. This one's going to go to...
Who?
Joe Biden.
Oh, my gosh.
Thank you so much. A very dramatic moment here on the program.
Yeah, well.
And thank you so much for that, Glenn.
You're welcome.
I will say, is it a big deal? Kind of, right? I mean, 4 years ago, it was Bernie Sanders beating Hillary Clinton by about 10 points in Oklahoma. So this is not a nothing win here for Joe Biden, who continues to outperform in state after state. Minnesota, Maine, two states that looked to be pretty sure for Bernie Sanders are very, very close right now. Instead, this is Biden's night so far, and there's really nothing stopping that ball rolling at this point.
All right, let me go to Elijah Schaffer, who is joining us via Skype from Blaze TV. And Elijah is a guy, and let me just show you a little bit of what Elijah does for a living. I don't know. I'd never do it myself, but he's a brave guy. Let me show you a little bit here of Elijah with the Bernie Bros, where they're taking his sign. Watch this.
So the 1%, if we took all of their money, could pay taxes for about 8 months and run the country, and then we'd be out of money. People don't know that. The 1%.
You guys came here just to be annoying.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, you did.
You're not even talking to anyone right here.
I know.
You talked to us first.
You guys are just doing this just to be annoying, and everyone knows that.
Who's everyone? A lot of people like our sign. Ton of people.
Everyone, dude. Everyone knows that you're an annoying piece of shit.
Oh, we're actually just asking people. Hey, let go of my sign right now, or I'm going to call the police. Let go of my sign. Let go of my sign. Let go of my sign. You have no right to touch my property. Let go of my sign.
All right.
Let go of it. This is a peaceful rally, man. Why are you doing?
You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I forgive you. Thank you.
That's not that. What did your sign say there, Elijah? What did it say?
Oh, it said, yeah, can you hear me? It said Bernie Sanders can't even shower. And it had a picture of Bernie Sanders with a bandage on his head at one of his rallies after he slipped while trying to get into the bathroom.
Well, this is why you're the host of Slightly Offensive on Blaze TV. You have dealt with these guys, and I don't know why, but you have gone in and you have seen them very much like Andy No has. Tell me who they are, the Bernie supporters, and tell me how they're going to react to the Democrats really all rallying around quickly around Joe Biden, and they think that's going to be a plot against Bernie. How are they going to react?
Well, I mean, when you're talking about people who flirt with communism, I mean, the USSR fell, and they didn't see that one coming, so I don't think people are truly seeing what theft looks like, and I'm glad at least that's the socialist-friendly people that are understanding that when things are kind of stolen from you, it's not so nice. And that's kind of what the DNC is trying to do, of course, with Biden. Up front, I have found that Bernie supporters are the most violent people because they don't mind, number one, taking your stuff. Number two, they don't mind breaking your stuff. And number three, it's because they don't respect property. I have a friend who's a Bernie supporter, and he wrote on Facebook, that we are going to come for your mansions. Like, we'll take it if you don't give us what we want. And I know that I wrote under there, oh, you're going to take our stuff. And someone tried to, backpedal and go, no, that's not what he's saying. And then the guy doubled down and said, yeah, no, we're coming for your stuff.
Wait, but this is a friend. This is a friend of yours?
This is Los Angeles. Yeah, I have communist friends. I have transgender friends. This is L.A. I mean, as long as
a little different. I've got communist friends who want to take your stuff and your mansion and your money and probably shoot you in the head. And I've got transgender friends. Those are two very different groups of people.
Well, the transgenderists might end up encouraging my son to have his genitals removed, which is actually worse than taking my stuff. That's one thing I hope that is never taken from him.
Have you thought about moving? I just wanted to point that out. So what is your thought about what's coming at the convention if the Bernie Sanders people don't get it? Project Veritas did some really fine reporting on the people that are in the campaign, that are on the grassroots level, if you will, and many of them were talking about burning Milwaukee to the ground, Molotov cocktails, beating police, taking over Milwaukee and destroying it if Bernie doesn't get his way. Hyperbole, just a couple of people, or what does your experience tell you?
Yeah, my experience tells me that undercover work of Kyle Jurek in Iowa, where he said that they want to take us to the gulags, and he said that they want, to basically burn the cities down. I think that that's absolutely correct, because a lot of the Antifa that I deal with personally are big Bernie supporters. They are believers in not working hard and making the country take care of you. And I think when they find out that you're not going to have your student loan debt forgiven just because you wanted to, when you find out that you're not going to just get whatever free stuff you want or be able to take from people just because you wanted to, I think they're going to be extremely upset. And I think that the revolution they're looking for, rather than try to take it to America, of course, nonviolent one, I think they're going to try to take it to their party. And I think we're going to see some sort of an insurrection in the Democratic Party where the young people are going to lose trust in what they can do for them. Because quite frankly, I think that the left is scared of Bernie. They're scared of the Bernie bros. They're scared of the people who back him because quite frankly, they realize that if those people try to take power, that's going to end up leading towards a revolution, and a bloody one at that. And I know that myself and a lot of people on the left as well are trying to avoid that. And I want to end with this. I've seen at one of the Democrat debates that I was at recently in Houston, the Democrats are hugely divided. They're fighting each other. They are arguing. They're really disgusted at one another, trying to figure out how to win against what might be one of the greatest presidents in history. And I know that the Bernie people, they should be taken very seriously. I've seen them walk up and hit me. I've seen them try to take my stuff. I've seen them argue with me that no matter what the facts say about capitalism being good, socialism is our future. They deny the truth. They deny evidence, they'll use violence, and they don't believe in the respect, the individual right to property. And so, yeah, we should be pretty, not afraid, but prepared.
All right. Thank you very much, Elijah. Again, you can watch his his show on Blaze TV. Warning, follow the name, slightly offensive. Blaze is unlike ABC television that fired, what was his name from ABC when he was doing that show? Bill Maher, for politically incorrect. He was doing the show Politically Incorrect, and everybody was like, why, he just said something politically incorrect. We should fire him. This is slightly offensive, and you should be forewarned on Blaze TV. All right, let's look at what people are saying online, questions that you might have. You can contact us through Twitter. And Sarah, what do we have?
We have got a question from Sean Vickers. This goes back to the conversation, Glenn, that you had with Jon Miller earlier this evening. Sean wants to know, why is Tulsi not doing better with the nation? So, Chad, you've got this woman. She is a diverse woman. She is not, in fact, an old white man. She is not a billionaire. Why is she not doing better with the nation, especially when you consider now, we could have the conversation how moderate she really is, but they portray her in the media to be a moderate. She portrays herself to be a moderate. Why didn't she ever really take hold in this primary?
I think it's smoke and mirrors. I think people can see through the facade. The beauty of Bernie, if you will, is that he is a straightforward socialist. Everybody knows what they're going to get. The guy hasn't changed since he was running for mayor in Vermont. with her, you're not sure what you're getting. And I don't think that's appealed well to the progressive left.
Yeah, what do you think, Rob?
I think that Tulsi is, someone that appeals to anti-war folks. And I don't think there's a lot of those people in the party. And the ones that are going towards Bernie. And like Chad said, Bernie is a solid socialist. He never lies about who he is. That's who he is. And Tulsi has tried to play, I think, the right a little bit. And I think it's, she's an attractive woman. She's gotten a lot of like the right bro type guys that are like, yeah, let's go Tulsi, that she thought maybe would come out and vote for her. But I don't think that she excites the base of the Democratic Party at all.
Can I ask you this question? How much of her just I love America is just completely out of step now with the Democratic Party? I mean, I don't agree with her policies. Her policies in many ways are very left, very, very left. And she's from Hawaii, for the love of Pete. So she's not a moderate at all. Mm-hmm. But she doesn't like the establishment because she knows she names it for what it is. And she also has fought for America, believes in America, doesn't want the fundamental end of capitalism, et cetera, et cetera. How much of just I think America's a good place is just no longer acceptable for the Democrats?
Yeah.
Do you remember back whenever she and her husband put out the social media video where they were singing the Christian Christmas carol, of course, and it was very Christ-centered? She's not a Christian, right? And I think people see through that. It's not real. It's not authentic. There's no integrity behind it. And I think that's what the problem is when you parlay that over into her politics. There's something fake about it all. The thing that scares me about Tulsi is if she chooses to run as an independent. That's a bigger debate. Does that hurt Trump? I think it hurts Donald Trump more than it hurts anybody on the left.
She's not going to have it. She won't have anybody who's...
One would think not, but crazy things are happening.
Well, she's the candidate of Russians, right? I mean, that's what the left is saying.
Well, Glenn, I do think that there is something to her running as pro-America. I don't think that you can do that in the Democrat Party as it is right now. I also think she got largely dinged when she came out against third trimester late-term abortion. You're not allowed to have that stance. You are not allowed to say a viable baby should be born in the Democrat Party.
Which is crazy. When will the regular Democrat, the people I disagree with, but I can live next door to, when are they going to see these people do not tolerate anything that is not in lockstep? I mean, how many people do we know that were in the Tea Party that we really disagree on big things? Big things. How many libertarians do we know that are like, hookers should be everywhere? And you're like, no, I don't agree with that. But we can stand next to each other, help each other, live next to each other, and not try to silence one another.
I don't think that exists in the Democratic Party. I think the Democratic Party has become, it's not a big tent. We talk about the Republican Party as being a big tent, and in some ways it's not, some ways it is. But I think that the Democratic Party has a rigid ideological step, and they're going to vote for those people. And I think it's why it's lost the appeal that it's had. I think that's part of why Hillary Clinton lost. I mean, she won California, she won the big electoral college state, some of the big electoral college states, but she didn't win enough of the smaller states to win the election because the American people see through that. And I think the further the Democrats go to the left, the worse it's going to be for them.
Let's get to another question here. John Woodland wants to know what percentage of those saying, actually, you know what, we're going to go ahead and hold that question.
We're calling a state Colorado, and we're going to call it for Tulsi Gabbard.
No. See, now you have built. That was good.
Crap.
Now people are like, wait, Tulsi Gabbard won a state. No, sadly, Tulsi did not win a state. Actually, however, Bernie did finally win a state.
Wow.
Bernie Sanders now has won only his home state and the state of Colorado. And Colorado kind of gives us a tale of two different states here, Glenn, because, oh no, the three wise men are moving
closer to my desk.
Closer and closer.
If they get all the way to my desk, it's Christmas for me.
You seem to be rooting for Bernie Sanders suddenly
I'm
in
just
this race.
saying it's been over 20 years. Yeah, been almost 25 years now. I'm thinking,
Quickly, Glenn, a tale of two states here. Colorado is entirely vote by mail, so it is not a state where you could make up your mind last minute. One of the states where Bernie is performing as expected. Another state, Minnesota, Bernie Sanders, the overwhelming favorite, it does not look good for him here, as the highest percentage in any state made up their mind last minute. Obviously, Klobuchar dropping out of the race. She was a co-favorite with Bernie in this. When Klobuchar drops out, people think Bernie's going to be able to win this thing easily, because some of the states' early votes and such would still go to Klobuchar. Well, it looks like Biden's going to be able to overcome that and potentially win Minnesota, which would be a big deal.
Wow.
So again, there's nothing disproving this at this point. It's a big-time Biden night.
All right. I was at CPAC this weekend, and several people actually came up to me and said, we want the straight scoop on Bill O'Reilly. And I said, I can't tell you. Please help me. I'm being held hostage by him. I actually told them what I really believe, that Bill O'Reilly is one of the only guys in mainstream media that treated me decently, helped me out a great deal, taught me an awful lot, and is one of the only real thinkers in mainstream media when he was in mainstream media, and will call it like he sees it. And I'm proud to call Bill O'Reilly a friend of mine. And Bill O'Reilly is joining us now from BillO'Reilly.com. Hello, Bill. I didn't mean anything I just said.
Well, I feel like father knows best, and you're a bud, okay? But I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah.
You were worth cultivating, Beck.
Yeah, sure.
You're a very interesting guy.
Now I'd like to return the favor and say, wear a tie. Wear a tie.
Why?
Just on our
I'm a
program.
socialist.
You were like
power to the people, right on.
When we did the
power to the people, Beck.
When we did the State of the Union, I think you were in your jammies. Can you just wear a tie from time to time?
This shirt costs more than your car. All right, so come on, get on.
You don't know what I drive, but Bill, tell me what you think about what's happening tonight.
Okay. Elizabeth Warren, big loser, she's gone. Nasty woman, not going to be sad to see her go.
Right. Okay.
Second big loser, Mayor Bloomberg.
Yeah.
All right. Bloomberg got destroyed by Warren, ironically. All right. So the biggest loser destroyed the second loser. So Bloomberg, I understand, has stopped his buys except in Florida, and he can pull those ads anytime he wants. So he's going to make some kind of deal with Biden.
This is the second mayor of New York City that has tried this strategy. It didn't work with Giuliani, and it didn't work with him. Giuliani, I think, is a likable guy, at least especially back then for most of the country. Now everybody hates him because he was for Trump, but he was a likable guy. He was America's mayor. It didn't work. Bloomberg is just he's more unlikable than you.
Thank you, Beck. I appreciate that. At least I've risen now one slot. Listen, Mayor Mike showed weakness. It's not about being unlikable, all right? It's about leadership. So when Warren went after him and started to smear him, all the mayor had to do was look and say, Senator, you've got some nerve accusing me of anything when your whole academic career was built on a fraud, that you are you are a Native American, okay? All he had to do was that, and that would have shut her up, but she destroyed him. But as we stand here on Super Tuesday night, Mayor Mike has got nowhere to go. Now, he did carry American Samoa.
Right.
I believe he bought it.
Right.
I believe he bought it.
He may have.
But I'm not sure. But he's got nowhere to go. So he'll make a deal with Biden. You wait and see. And Mayor Mike will endorse Biden in return for maybe Secretary of the Treasury, ambassador to the Court of St. James in London, something. That's how this goes. Buttigieg made a deal with Biden. Klobuchar made a deal with him. And there was nobody to deal with Bernie because Bernie doesn't like Warren.
Right.
Nobody likes Warren.
Right.
So Warren's gone. Mayor Mike is gone for all intents and purposes. It now comes down to Bernie versus Say It Ain't So Joe.
Okay.
And Joe has got the fix in. Joe has got the fix in.
All right, so let me take it there. He's got the fix in. I agree with you. The
Right.
Democrats, Obama was working the phones for Joe Biden to try to bring everybody in.
Yep.
And not as much for Joe Biden, I think, as anti-Sanders, which is a very weird thing to be saying, knowing what we know about Barack Obama and his philosophies on America. But he's not a violent revolutionary. He's a progressive. That happens to like Marx. And that's very different than Bernie Sanders. So the fix is in, but we have two problems. Bernie Sanders has a violent crowd, and they are not going to take this sitting down. This is the second time they'll feel that the Democrats screwed them out of this. The other issue is that Joe Biden is, and I say this without any happiness, but Joe Biden is seriously having issues, senior moments. He's not the guy he was in 2016. So how does this play out?
Okay, very good questions, and I will answer them with detail.
Okay.
So, the populist movement that Sanders hoped would occur has not. He doesn't have enough Bernie bros. He doesn't have enough millennials. He has no African Americans, and he has some of the Hispanics. But the coalition is not big enough to get him the delegates he needs to be the nominee. Need 1,991. It's not going to get him. Okay. They go into Milwaukee in July. The police are going to be anticipating the Bernie bros will cause trouble, and they will be in Green Bay. That's where they will be. That's how far away from the convention center. So I'm not anticipating anything there. What Bernie has to pray for, well, he's an atheist, so he won't pray, but hope for.
Pray to Fidel. He was great.
Is that Joe Biden self-destructs. So Bernie's going to stay in. He'll accumulate delegates, but he won't be enough. And Biden's close now. Biden will be right close to him. But you're correct. Joe Biden cannot speak. His thought process can't find its way to his mouth. And we know commentators and radio talk show guys like that all the time. But running for president is different.
Well, but I think there's a difference. Bill, wait. Joe Biden has always had a problem putting his foot in his mouth. He's always had that. But I felt bad for him during the last debate because he reminded me of my grandfather when we had to tell him he can't drive anymore. And the more he protested and tried to show that he was competent, it just, to the family, we all stood around and went, I mean, he's proving that he's not competent. And that was exactly the feeling. And I've heard this from several people. So are you saying that he's just continuing on the foot in the mouth disease that he's always had? Or do you recognize that there has been a change in him in the last 3-4 years?
I am not willing to define whatever his problem is. It's not fair for me to do it. I'm not qualified to do it. I will tell you that yesterday he could not quote the
Declaration
of Independence. All right? He didn't know whether it was Super Tuesday or Super Thursday.
That's true.
In the last debate, he said 150 million Americans were killed by gunfire in the last 7 years.
And you know what?
You make up your own determination.
You can say that 150 million, he meant 150,000 or whatever, but then he doubled down and said that's more than all the wars, World War I, World War II. So he was thinking it through. He just couldn't realize that was not anywhere close.
What really was instructive was the 5 CBS moderators went, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's okay. So Biden's got a problem, right? Everybody knows he's got a problem. How big a problem will it become? That's what Bernie Sanders is hoping it overwhelms Biden. So by the time July rolls around, Biden can't run because he's befuddled to the extent that it's an embarrassment.
Who does he pick?
And by the way, tomorrow you're going to see the corporate media, which is 90% of it. This is Disney, ABC, Comcast, NBC, AT&T, CNN. They're going to all throw in with Biden tomorrow. And here's what you're going to hear. What a resurgence. How did he do it? Oh, Joe, the comeback kid. All of this is going to happen because the corporations don't want Sanders. All right, Amazon, which owns the Washington Post, They don't want Sanders. Sanders is going to take Bezos's $160 million house.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Come on, he just bought it. So you're going to see the corporate media, which now controls the flow of national information in this country, start to basically get behind Biden. So that's a big advantage for Biden. So they're going to keep Biden away. I don't think Biden and Bernie are going to do one-on-ones. I'd be surprised.
So
if that happens.
Who do you think that Biden would pick as a vice president? Because a vote for Biden will be a vote for his vice president as president, I think.
Okay. Well, 78 years old, you got to have a vibrant vice president.
Right.
I think he goes for an African-American woman.
Please
So
don't
then
say from
you
Georgia.
got the,
Don't say from Georgia. Please don't say.
You know, I have to consider her. But he needs an African-American in a state that he's got to win. So there are a lot of African-American women who are qualified. I think he's going to go that route to solidify his African-American support, and that is acceptable to the progressive left. Might peel off a few Bernie bros with that.
I heard today, I read someplace that Trump is going to go with Nikki Haley and pass on Pence. I don't believe it because Trump is loyal above all things. Do you think that's even a possibility?
I can tell you with certainty that has not been discussed at all.
Okay. All right. Bill, what is your prediction going into the convention? I know you don't do predictions, but humor me. I did a prediction. I said 6 months ago that Biden would be the nominee. I'm going to stay to that. Even when he had all his trouble, I didn't throw him under the bus. I was as amazed as everybody else at his inefficiency in the campaign. I don't expect that will improve. I think he's going to be befuddled to the end. But the corporate masters within the party, Podesta, Rahm Emanuel, Terry McAuliffe, all of these people, they obviously want Biden because Biden will do as he is told. Biden will do as he is told by the Democratic machine. They want him. They don't want Bernie. So that's big. And then when the corporate media falls into line behind Biden, which they absolutely will, all right, that's a formidable alliance. And Donald Trump better take it seriously. I know Donald Trump wants Bernie Sanders to be the guy he runs against.
Yeah.
Who do you think is the one that is easier to beat?
Oh, no doubt, Bernie. My analysis says that Bernie Sanders could only win 15 states, and that's if everything goes right for him. All right?
Does this, by him not getting
if you do the math,
does this get the nomination? If he loses the nomination and he's not the candidate, does this make him and his socialist ideas and his socialist track of the party stronger as it did with, Barry Goldwater and Buckley losing in New York? It created the Reagan era, really. Do we see a stronger socialist movement and a weaker Democratic Party?
No, I think it hurts the far left. If Bernie gets wiped out, it hurts them.
And if he doesn't,
if
he doesn't get the nomination, and it hurts
them.
It hurts the Sanders people.
Yeah, the socialists. He'll never again be a socialist candidate if Bernie Sanders doesn't make it. Because Warren got wiped out. You're not going to have 4 years from now another socialist come up.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. So this is it for the socialists. All right. And if Bernie doesn't get it, I predict 10 to 15% of the hardcore bros won't vote. That's not that many people.
Okay.
So Biden could still win, but it'll hurt.
All right, Bill O'Reilly, we will check with you tomorrow on the radio program for a few minutes after we get all the numbers in from tonight. We'll do that tomorrow on radio. Also, Ben Shapiro and the guys of Daily Wire are coming up. All the voices that you want to hear. First, we have two races to call, Arkansas and Minnesota.
That's right, Glenn. Arkansas is not a huge surprise. Arkansas goes to Joe Biden, which is relatively expected coming into today.
Yeah, that was one that was safe with him for quite a while.
Yeah, it didn't look like he was going to win that. But I will say here, the most stunning piece of news since this day started is Minnesota goes to Joe Biden. Joe Biden had exactly 0 staffers working in the state this entire time. He was not contesting the state.
In which state?
In Minnesota. Now, obviously, Klobuchar is the wild card there. You know, it was expected that she either would win that state or be very competitive with Sanders. Her dropping out has pushed Biden to the victory there, which is, I mean, if it was a 15-20% chance, I would have been surprised. That is a huge win, despite the ridiculous music being played for it.
Well, it's just, it feels like Joe Biden.
Yeah, this is turning into a home run type of night for Joe Biden. Really, what is left for Bernie Sanders? He's still expected to win California, and we still expect that to happen. Though I will say,
probably quite a few delegates if the exit polls are accurate when it comes to Texas. The exit polls in Texas showed the voters coming out saying they were a fan of socialism at a higher percentage rate than those coming out of the voting booths in California, which is stunning.
Yeah, no, I mean, stunning is not even the word
stunning.
For it. Makes me want to just maybe
move
become
the
a
three
gated
wise
community.
men a little closer to baby Jesus over here.
I mean, Chad's drinking his other 3 wise men. He's falling down on the job over there. But yeah, I mean, look at, you know, if Bernie Sanders does not win Texas tonight, this is an utter disaster for him. I mean, California is still there, and he will get a lot of delegates there, and he's not going to drop out after tonight. But this has gone from not a good night to a really bad night to a complete disaster if he loses Texas. Minnesota was not in the picture of what I thought would happen tonight. You'd think that just because of early voting and everything else, there'd be enough Klobuchar votes to pull away from Biden that it would not happen. It is happening. He still leads in Maine by a hair. Again, this is a state he was supposed to win easily. He's just ahead. He does lead early in Texas, only about 10% of the vote in. And it looks like, however, Bloomberg will cross the 15% threshold there, and Warren is relatively close to it, which means even a victory there would not do much in the delegate world for him. This is a bad night for socialism, ladies and gentlemen. I know you're depressed to hear that.
Move the 3 wise men a little closer to me. I know they were supposed to move closer.
I thought they were supposed to move farther away when socialism.
Yeah, well, it also could be a celebratory event.
Seems like no matter what the result is, you're getting Jack Daniels. That's what it seems like.
All right, it is exactly 9 o'clock in the East, and our Super Tuesday coverage continues on Blaze TV. We want to ask you to join us at Blaze TV and become a member of the family. BlazeTV.com. Use the promo code SUPER, and you're going to save 20% on your yearly subscription. This hour, coming up in just a few minutes, we are going to talk to Steve Deace at the bottom of the hour about what he is seeing. And in just about 15 minutes, we're going back to California and get the view from Ben Shapiro and the boys at the Daily Wire. That should be a lively conversation. I think they're actually interviewing me for their show. We're doing a simulcast for their program. So we will have them on both dailywire.com and blazetv.com. Let's go back over to our panel. Sarah.
Thanks, Glenn. We have more tweets, and remember, you can tweet us your questions using the hashtag BlazeTV Super Twos. Again, we're very hip here. John Woodland wants to know, we kind of touched on this earlier, what percentage of those saying they have a favorable view of socialism in the exit polls do you think actually know what socialism is? Rob, we talked about this. Chad was here when we talked about this earlier in the program. But, we talked about the Democrats are so effective in their messaging about socialism, giving the voters this warm and fuzzy feeling that socialism is just really awesome free stuff, and why would you not want to vote for it? When in reality, there's probably not a high percentage of them who actually know what it is that they're voting for when it comes to socialism.
Right. They think that it's, roads and schools and Social Security. Social Security was a socialist program. It's not, socialism. But I don't think that they understand truly what happens in Venezuela, because our media doesn't tell them. They don't understand what happened in Cuba. They think it's fine, when Bernie says, well, they had a good literacy rate, and you've had Democrats for years say, well, their health care is great, And the media doesn't question that. And they don't understand that socialism has been responsible for millions and millions and millions of deaths. You know, it's not just communism. Communism is a form of socialism, but it's an authoritarian ideology, and dictatorship is a feature, not a bug, of socialism. And I don't think that the average voter gets it. I think that they think it's the Scandinavian countries and it's Europe, which are, you know, welfare states that are able to give people, you know, services like free health care because we're protecting them and we're spending all our military money so they have extra money lying around.
Yeah.
Oh, but Rob, it's never been tried properly. Just got to institute it properly. You know, what's funny to me is they say, well, we're more enlightened, we're more educated. Of course, we've got the internet these days. We know how to do it right. Get on the internet and see how people are already at each other's throats. Now get them out there where they're having to fight over food and water and milk and necessities and shelter. And let's see how that plays out. Man's inhumanity to man has not changed in millennia. So it's not any different now. The human heart is desperately corrupt. And let me tell you, you institute the economy that leads to communism in this country amongst people who have never suffered anything, we got problems.
That's a good point. I think that is a lot of the disconnect with the American society today, is that they are so overprivileged that they in fact think that they're oppressed because they've never had to go through anything. So they have no perspective on what is true oppression. They think, you know, they don't get the latest iPhone and somehow they're oppressed.
Right. I mean, they need to change a light bulb, and a millennial will go to their app on their phone and get a TaskRabbit guy to come over and change their light bulb because they don't know how to change the light bulb. You know, what we have at our fingertips is absolutely amazing. And you're seeing, I think you're going to see it now with hand sanitizer because of this coronavirus thing. You can't find hand sanitizer anywhere. And I think people are going to start...
N95 masks.
Yeah.
There was a poll that came out today. We were talking about it on our show. 20% of people in the UK don't know how to change a light bulb.
Shut up.
That's hard to believe.
Shut up.
Yeah. Mostly millennials.
Hello, Glenn.
Come on.
You screw it in. I mean, how
many
millennial British millennials does it take to change a light bulb? Apparently 80%. 80%, yeah. Holy cow.
Glenn, before I get to another question, I heard Bill O'Reilly say he doesn't think that we will ever see another socialist
I think he's
candidate.
absolutely wrong.
Okay.
I agree. Absolutely He's wrong. He's wrong. I think this is going to strengthen the movement. What people don't take into account is culture, as Andrew Breitbart says. Culture is the nose of the dog. Politics is the tail end of the dog. And culture is all going towards this collectiveness, this collective idea, socialism, no property. You know, think about this. When you say, you know, you go to, you know, TaskRabbit, is that right?
I think it's TaskRabbit or something. That's one of the things you can go to.
And you can get somebody to change your light bulb if you don't know how. This is, my son, strangely, is like, I get my license when I get my license. Yeah. He's not, they're not, I remember when I was 15, I counted to my 15th birthday so I could get my driver's permit. They're not like that. They're not, this is an ownership society that now is saying, I'll rent the runway, I'll have somebody else drive me to work. Ownership is not part of it in the future. That and what's happening in our universities, we're changing. We are, you know, I said this, 20 years ago. I said there's with technology, there is going to come a time that is going to be the Industrial Revolution jammed into about a 10-year period. That took 100 years from the cotton gin to, you know, World War II. That was 100 years. And we changed, and it was brutal and ugly as that changed. The change that we have made in the last 10 years is nothing compared to the change that's coming in the next 10 years. And we're going through this period that is going to be as dramatic as picking cotton to building the atomic bomb. And I don't think there's any way to predict how people are going to react to that, especially in the short term, when you're talking about taking care of everyone. I think there needs to be a strong discussion in the country among conservative and libertarian intellectuals What happens if coronavirus, they're now saying the prediction today was 70% of the global population will get this. 70. They also said there's more deaths on the way because it looks like the numbers aren't as good as we thought they would be in the West, far as deaths. If 70% of our population gets it, we are all isolated. We are not buying things. We're not driving places. We're not going to see movies. We're not congregating. They're canceling concerts. All of these things happen. That's a stop, a full stop of the economy. How do you pay your rent? Should the government bail people out? I'm not for bailouts, because I'm not for bailouts for people who have made a mistake, weren't playing by the rules, played it fast and loose. You know, if you got your money in your stock, in the stock market, you know, I do too. Oh, well, we're rolling the dice. The bank shouldn't have been bailed out because they knew what they were doing. This is an act of God. Does the government pay everyone a basic minimum income for 6 months? Maybe you have to pay it back, but we're going to pay your mortgage. We're going to pay your food. We're going to do this because if you don't, everyone will scream for a socialist program that will last forever. How do we navigate waters we've never seen before?
Let's go to another question.
I just put everybody to sleep.
Beats me. I'm out, dude. I'm out. I'm done. I quit. I'm walking off the set, man.
In the Great Depression, right? That's what they were dealing with in the Great Depression.
That's fun.
Yeah. You're not going to survive.
I told you before.
Roosevelt.
You're the Beckiest Glenn Beck ever. I'm telling you, I've said it before.
B. Benoni, I think I'm saying that right. B. Benoni wants to know what you guys think. Any chance Bernie would run third party? I mean, he does have an axe to grind with the Democrat Party.
There's a weird supernatural voodoo, white magic, mystical, stick the pins in the doll thing going on, because you're right, what you said earlier, there was no chance Biden was going to look this good coming into this, and now there's this odd, come from behind miracle that's happening.
It's like it is voodoo.
Yeah.
Because he looks worse than he was. He's getting mentally worse, I think.
But so there's weird stuff going on. And so the issue that I was going to say, talking about that, is we may find out a lot faster than Milwaukee as to which city's going to burn. Because if Bernie comes out of this thing and his people feel screwed tonight, you might see some reactions that are pretty wild way before we get to convention time.
I mean, if there's someone who's going to say, screw it, I'm running third party.
If that happens, Bernie, right? Then you may see Bernie emerge as a third party, because he really isn't a Democrat anyway.
Right.
So why not?
I don't think he'll do it.
No,
I don't think he can. There's a lot of states with ballot access that if you appeared in the primary, you can't appear in the. So he wouldn't be able to run in all states. We went over this.
Reason to burn the whole system down.
Exactly.
Burn it down.
Exactly. So we'll see what happens, but I don't think he runs as an independent. He might get somebody to run as an independent and endorse them.
Yeah, and I go back to what Giancarlo said earlier. Communists are real good at not accepting the results of elections. They're just going to say, no, we're going to, this is a force thing. We're going to come at you.
Yeah. And they've said they're going to do it.
Yeah.
In the videos that
we've already had. Glenn already, God, bleak, man. I want to roll up my sleeves.
Let's go to another tweet we've got from evaporating dog-faced pony soldier.
One of
no
Vermin's
idea
people?
wherever
Is this a
you
Vermin
got that
guy?
name from. Given their ages, do you think this is the, quote, last chance for Sanders, Biden, and Warren?
Not Warren. She's got one more in her.
She's spry. She's pretty spry,
she's
even
pretty
with
spry.
the age.
She's got one more. Bernie Sanders, I mean, he could drop dead tonight, and it wouldn't be surprising. Joe Biden could wander out of his home tonight and be lost, and his family searching for him tonight. I think those two are done.
Yeah, you referenced something earlier. You do have to feel sorry for Joe Biden. I mean,
do.
You can't watch this. A part of it is somewhat entertaining just because we're evil and beguiling people, but it's a sad state of affairs. 1 of 6 people over 80 have dementia. He obviously has that going on. He doesn't know where he's at. So this is a dangerous thing we're playing with on a lot of levels, but you're exactly right.
There's a media angle to that, right? That Joe Biden's not all there. Look, you guys remember during the Reagan presidency, I was a young kid, but you remember when the media, even before he said he had Alzheimer's in the late 90s,
Oh
the
my
media, the media all the time was like, he's forgetting this, he's forgetting that, he's forgetting this.
They were
But even when he wasn't.
Yeah, they said that about him in like 1984. That was part of, you can't reelect him. He's going to be old and he's senile. No, he's not. He was absolutely sharp until the very end. After he left, at the very end, you could see a little bit of a slippage, but nothing like you're seeing with Joe Biden.
I think it can't always come down to age either, right? Because, I mean, Donald Trump is right up there with Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, and you see a stark difference when you look at Donald Trump and you look at Joe Biden.
Oh, my gosh. There's a huge difference. There's something genetic going on with Donald Trump that is just like superhero. I mean, I don't know what it is, but that guy doesn't stop. There's no slippage there. Now, there might be in 4 years from now, but right now there's not. Joe Biden is not Donald Trump. All right, let me go to Stu now. We'll get a quick update on where we are, and then we're going to be joining Ben Shapiro and the guys at Daily Wire. Join their simulcast. They'll be joining ours in just a minute. First, Stu.
First of all, we can confirm your last piece of analysis there that Joe Biden is not Donald Trump. They are two individual people, completely different individuals. I want to give you an update on we have 4 states that are outstanding. California's still voting. They don't stop for a little while still. We have 4 states that are outstanding and too close to call at this point. Give you a quick update on here. Massachusetts, Biden leads at 34%, Bernie Sanders at 28%, Elizabeth Warren at 20%, and Michael Bloomberg at 12%. In Maine, very, very close. Biden and Sanders both at 34%, another state that Sanders was supposed to win relatively easily. Warren at 16% and Bloomberg at 11%. Texas is seemingly the best news for Bernie Sanders so far tonight. 29% for Sanders, 23% for Biden, 19% for Bloomberg, and 13% for Warren. And again, a big issue here with the rules of the game. The fact that Bloomberg is over 15% is going to cut down on the victory for Sanders if he does get it. And then in Utah, that's just closed here in the last hour. 33% for Sanders so far, 19% Bloomberg, 16% Warren, and 12% Biden.
Crazy.
It is absolutely crazy.
Utah and Texas going for Sanders is nuts. Is absolutely nuts. Thank you very much. Now, I guess we're getting ready to join the simulcast here for Daily Wire Backstage. I love these guys.
They're saying under libertarianism,
and I love the Elizabeth Warren
because they're
cigar
eliminating religion from the field.
Can you zoom in on that?
I want to hear
Hang
this
on,
point.
Jeremy Boring
We're
is
being joined right now by our friend Glenn Beck. He's the CEO and founder of The Blaze, as well as the host of the Glenn Beck program. He's also quite a looker, a great dancer. Glenn.
Well, at least you speak the truth. That's the first truthful thing I've heard you say all night, Jeremy. By the way, I have, you guys have been here, I have quite a collection of really cool stuff. That Elizabeth Warren is the greatest thing. Where did you get it? What did it cost? And what will you sell it for? That is tremendous.
Well, Glenn, we're not very good, but we're real expensive. I'll tell you the truth. I spent 2 years trying to pull this joke off. There are very few wooden cigar Indian makers left. You'll be surprised to learn. And I went to them, and they all thought that it was hilarious. And then they all turned me down because they were afraid of the blowback. They were afraid that they would lose this little niche business that they've managed to stay under the radar and not have the woke culture take away from them. So then I went to Hollywood prop people to make it out of styrofoam. They all turned me down flat. I kept pursuing it for 2 years. I'm going to tell you where this came from. I don't know. The reason I don't know, our set design person, Carol, our art director, found someone who would make it, but only if we would pay cash up front to her, which she would then deliver to them and never have us know who they are. That is the honest to God truth.
That is America today, isn't it? That's a sad story. Is it wood? Is it made out of wood?
It is not, unfortunately. It's a styrofoam made in a prop shop.
Since we're acknowledging the statue,
I got to tell you, somebody in the Blaze audience will make one for me out of wood. I know it. All right, go ahead.
I do want to point out for the audience that Elizabeth is standing on a book that says Pow Wow Chow. So I just wanted to get all the details.
That's fantastic. We have the Elizabeth Warren theme. Can we play the Elizabeth Warren theme? Every time we talk about Elizabeth Warren, we play her campaign song here. Can you roll that so they can hear that? There it is. It's a snappy number, but maybe that's just me.
On my show, I was using Colors of the Wind for at least.
Glenn, you're in Texas. Is Bernie Sanders going to pull it off down there?
It looks like it. I mean, that is insane. Stop, you damn people in California. Stop coming here. Stop it.
Now, I'm going to defend Californians, which I rarely do. But when Ted Cruz was in that very tight race with Beto O'Rourke 2 years ago now, in the polling that came out afterwards, it was actually native-born Texans who were more likely to support Beto, and all of the Californians who had moved to the state were more likely to vote for Ted Cruz.
Because it's all the good Californians who leave.
Yeah, the people who leave California are actually the conservative Californians.
I have to tell you that this I find really, really disturbing. There was an exit poll here in Texas that showed the support for those who were leaving the polling booth. What was it? Was it 54 or 57% of those that left the polling booth here in Texas had a favorable opinion of socialism. In California, that number was 54.
Wow.
Something is wrong. Something's very wrong.
So how do you feel about the fact that Joe Biden appears to be having a pretty good night? I'm excited about it, frankly, because anything that does not force half the country into embracing full-on communism is a good thing for me. But I know a lot of people are more fearful of Biden beating Trump than Sanders beating Trump. So where are you coming down on this?
I think any day that Joe Biden gets up and can find his shoes is a good day for Joe Biden. I don't think. I think we were just talking about it. We kind of feel bad for Joe Biden, as we don't like him, we don't like his policies, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't revel in somebody declining in front of the United States. You know what I mean? It's sad.
I do. I enjoy it. But a good person would not enjoy it.
Yeah. Right. And I'm pretending to be a good person. So I actually feel bad. So I don't think a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for whoever he picks as the vice president. Sanders, I think, would put a nail in the coffin. I'm kind of worried that Sanders not getting the nomination, sell your home in Milwaukee, get the hell out of there, or buy a lot of fire extinguishers. But I'm afraid that what's happening with Sanders will be what happened on a very accelerated rate to Buckley or to Goldwater. That set up Ronald Reagan. Mm-hmm. And I think you're going to see a snapback. I don't like the risk of Bernie Sanders, the possibility risk big, win big. This is a risk big, lose big. If he would win, we would lose our nation. But I would love to see a defeat, an out-and-out, head-to-head battle between capitalism and socialism, and let's put this to rest. Let's just put this to rest.
I'm with you, Glenn. I think I would rather see this is the conversation the country is having. Let's have it in the voting booth. Let's have it out. It's dangerous, but I'd rather see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the other side of that. I really think that it's incredibly dangerous because there's so many people who are just going to centralize around the Democratic nominee just to defeat Trump.
Yes.
That you're going to get 25% of the population embracing full-blown communism just because they don't like Trump.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is dangerous.
But
I think that Bernie Sanders' base is actually a quarter.
After we're all in a gulag for 20, 30 years, they'll think twice.
Yeah, I don't want to go down in history as a cautionary tale. That's not.
We're headed for that.
The one hope with Bernie though is, first of all, I agree. I want the honest conversation. I want the honest debate. I think Trump is going to win 57 states, plus Samoa, plus Greenland. But even if Bernie Sanders wins, the consolation there is the man has never accomplished anything on a legislative level, despite having been in government for half a century.
You know, I hate to say this, Michael, because you're a smart guy and but you sound like the people who are like, yeah, but if Hitler gets in, we're going to be able to maneuver around him. I mean, he's not going to...
This is right. This is right. I mean, the fact is that Bernie, where presidents do the most damage, and where Trump maybe has done the most good, is actually not on domestic policy. Everyone likes to talk about his domestic policy. Trump's foreign policy has been stellar. I mean, overall, it's been really stellar. And Bernie, because the commander-in-chief has such exorbitant powers in this particular area, Bernie as commander-in-chief scares the living daylights out of me.
Bernie
What
gets
he was doing to the
Guantanamo
American
to Cuba. Like, day one, he gets
He gives Florida to Cuba, dude. I mean, forget about Guantanamo.
So let me ask
he
you
gives
this.
us to Cuba and we can go get cigars.
We were talking about the coronavirus today in my office off air, and I believe the coronavirus is going to cause real impact economically. We're all going to get it eventually, just like we all have had the 1918 flu. I mean, this is just another strain of flu. I hope that it doesn't, kill 2% of the population, but we're all going to get it. Barack Obama didn't release any federal money until 1,000 people were killed by the swine flu. Everybody is freaking out about this. We're talking about closing schools, et cetera, et cetera. How much of this do you guys believe is real, and how much of this is the left or the corporate media wanting this to be real to hurt the economy? Because that's the only thing that will hurt Donald Trump, I think.
They so desire this to be a real disaster that they can blame on him. I think, it's a flu. It's we're going to have these things come through from time to time. It's going to be what a flu is. The flu. What does the flu kill every year? 65,000 people or something like that?
68,000.
Yeah, but the death rate on a traditional flu is 0.1%. The death rate on this one is somewhere between 1% and 2%. The transmission rate, they're still trying to figure out. It's sort of hard to tell what the death rate is based on the fact that
I'm not sure
it's
that we
in
know
China.
Yeah.
What was that?
I'm not sure that we know the death rate because I don't think that we know when people have mild.
We don't know what the denominator is.
Right.
Okay,
so it's hard to tell what that is. But
So
yeah.
the R naught which is the infection rate, is a lot higher than the flu. And the death rate, CDC came out today and said we might want to readjust some of these numbers. The death rate in the West may actually be higher. They've been projecting that China is in the 2.9, but they thought it would come down in the West. It was at first hovering about 1.5 per thousand. But it looks like they're talking now that it might be in the 2s for the West as well. That's
Except
significant.
that I'm not sure that if people have mild versions of it, they may never know that it was coronavirus that they had.
Yeah. Well,
I'll say
that's the one thing that I think we're going to see these numbers start going through the roof because we're testing now. We hadn't been testing before.
So what I think to answer your question, obviously the coronavirus is real, and obviously it's a problem that we're going to have to confront. I think that the fact that the Dow went into correction within 10 days of being at an all-time high, that is all the media. Are there going to be long-term economic consequences, long-term, to the fact that the supply chain's been disrupted, that international travel's been disrupted? There is some of that that's real, but even that is mostly, I think, being a response to the hype. When people are like, I'm canceling my travel and stocks and airlines are going to start to collapse, the media is desperate to promulgate this because they know that this is Trump's vulnerable.
So I'm actually more pessimistic about the reality of coronavirus's economic impact than everybody else here. Like, I think that the disruption of the supply chains are a very serious thing. I think that Europe's economy was already teetering on the brink of a recession or depression. They've done horrible systemic things to the economy in Europe, and they've been propping it up with central bank inflation for a very long time. When President Trump says, we got to look at Germany and how they inflate the currency, I read the GDP growth rates of Germany over the last couple of years. It's 0.1%, 0.2% per quarter. So trying to point at them and being like, look how they're handling it. It's fantastic. And did the same thing with Australia. Very silly. Also, it is 100% true that the media and the Democrats are trying to pin this on Trump when the thing has nothing to do with Trump, right? I mean, it's China and Europe.
There's a couple of things also. There's also a couple of things that I think you need to look at with the economy. On the good side, this was the coronavirus that brought the stock market. We've been waiting for a 15-20% correction in the market. This is a great correction in the market if it doesn't continue to go down. Great correction in the market because Trump doesn't get blamed by, it can be blamed by the media, but everybody right now is like, that's coronavirus. That's why they're all buying toilet paper. So that's the good side of it. The bad side is today the Fed cut by, what was it? Half a point?
Basis points.
Yeah.
50 basis points,
I mean, we're looking at a significant cut, and the market went down.
But don't you think that's because the cut signal to the market
yes.
that the government is concerned about this.
Yes.
They actually,
It's why Trump should stop shouting about the damn Fed.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. This is not what the Federal Reserve was designed for. Using the Federal Reserve as your solution of first resort to economic slowdowns is a disaster area. It doesn't figure out any of the underlying problems in an economy, and it's moronic for Trump to be saying, well, we should lower it to below zero. You want to tank the economy? Lower the interest rates to below zero. Go for it, dude.
So we were just, if I may just hijack your broadcast for a second. We were just talking about this, and I would love to get your opinion. Donald Trump, somebody, if the economy goes the way that everybody is believing it's going to in the media, and we have real disruption, we have people that are not working, the economy and the engine comes to a stop for a while. We've never seen the number one and number two, manufacturer and consumer, go down for a 6-month period. If those things do happen, we're going to have to do or consider what they're doing now in China or Hong Kong, and that is stop mortgages or give people a minimum, wage or whatever it is to keep things floating. How does a conservative, because I think we should talk about this and design something and promote something so it's not taken over by socialists, how does a conservative handle an economy that's stopped and pay people's mortgage? Do we do a loan program where, look, we'll give you $1,500 a month or whatever it is, but you have 10 years, 20 years to pay it back, but it's a stopgap from a socialist coming in and saying, I'm going to give you free everything because they're stingy and they won't give you anything, or a new FDR that starts programs that never go away? How do we deal with this?
I mean, in the past, in 1920, when there was a serious depression, that's exactly what happened. Private investors, people who were very wealthy, came out of the woodwork. They gave enormous amounts of charity. Employers floated their employees' loans. People recognized that the only way to keep the economy running was to incur some debt. That's when you would see the usefulness of the Fed actually lowering interest rates. At that point, when you have a serious crisis where the economy grounds to a halt, then the Fed makes it very cheap for you to borrow money, and presumably everybody lives on credit for a little while. But yeah, I mean,
but that's
that
not,
is the
that's
scary
not
thing.
today, and now everybody's going to scream about, I can't afford health care, I can't afford my rent, where's the government? In 1920, they told people, go away, it's not the government's job.
Yeah, but I think that this is the coronavirus thing. The supply chains will come back online.
Yes.
It's just a question of how long it's going to take for the supply chains to
Correct.
come back online. If we're talking about the underlying systemic issues in Europe and China, those are the ones that are scarier.
Yeah.
Because the fact is that China's been using debt-led growth in order to make its economy grow at these false rates, and Europe has been doing the same thing, which is why they keep having to undergo austerity cuts they don't actually pursue. Those are more serious problems for the world in the long run. I'm not so worried that the coronavirus is going to tip us into a depression as much as I'm worried that for a 6-month period everything sort of grinds to a halt. Nobody's forecasting that this tips us into like a full-scale economic meltdown. That's why the adjustment was 10% and not 50% of the economy, probably.
I think it would go to a full-fledged meltdown if you had the second black swan, and that's Bernie Sanders as president of the United States.
I agree with this. I agree with this.
Yeah.
We have to prevent Bernie Sanders from becoming president of the United States. Glenn, when you're not busy taking over every conservative organization online except for ours, and you're not predicting...
I am working on it.
Here's the thing. Your CEO, Tyler Cardin, he's what's working against you. I think he's the smartest guy in the business.
Yes.
And I'm only willing to work for the second smartest guy.
Well, you know what? Why don't we just join together, and you work for you guys and we work for us, and we just make sure that none of us go away and our voices are protected so we can last a long time.
Well, we're always here for you guys. For one thing,
Likewise.
you do produce the greatest ashtray in all of conservatism. We really appreciate
You're
that.
such a jerk. All right, thanks, guys. God bless you. Thank you. Good to talk to you. All right, Stu, let's get an update on Utah.
Yes, Utah. We can now call, and we can put that over in Bernie Sanders' column. Utah, it's a strange state. Strange state. Bernie Sanders is going to win there. It's not a huge... Oh, no.
Let me just take one of these, actually. Now we've got 2 wives.
2 wives, what happened to the third one? He's following.
You know, I'm starting to get a little depressed after your bleak speech a little while ago. Joe Biden, I almost forgot his name, giving a speech out in L.A. I think he just promised to cure cancer and Alzheimer's.
Oh, really?
It's going to be handy for him in the upcoming future.
Yeah,
and the Let Dairy Die ladies just stormed the stage, almost took out Jill.
We're missing some good stuff, apparently. Yeah, I mean, look, it's an expected win. He was favored in Utah, one of those states he absolutely had to win. Massachusetts is still not called. Neither is Maine or Texas. Those states are still pretty tight. But, I mean, this is not the way this was supposed to go. Bernie Sanders is going to have to figure out what he is doing after this, because this night has been I don't want to overstate it, but this is about as bad as you could have imagined this going if you're Bernie Sanders.
All right. Thank you.
I should say, when you're a socialist and as bad as it could go, that could mean 100 million dead. It's not that bad. Okay, there's not 9 digits dead anywhere, but it's a bad night for socialism.
Okay, so hang on. Can you pick this up on the Steadicam here? Can you get this? This is from MSNBC. It's the live footage in Los Angeles of Joe Biden. He's speaking, and who is the milkmaid?
It's the Let Dairy Die people. You know the ones who there was the topless ones that were protesting at the Bernie. They put their clothes on for Joe.
But the ones who are protesting others keep their clothes on.
They keep their clothes on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes
they're
sense.
afraid Joe's going to sniff them.
So what is the Let Dairy Die movement?
It's you remember what's his name?
I can't.
Jared
First
Leto?
of all, hold on. I'm very offended that you don't know the Let Dairy Die movement.
I know. Well,
Okay.
I'm a little sleepy. I'm not quite so woke.
Come on.
You remember Joaquin Phoenix at the Oscars when he was saying that we steal the milk from baby calves? It's those people. The other thing,
I tell you, as a rancher who has cows, it's actually kind of right. I mean, it is kind of right.
Yeah, they mourn.
You know,
they do
mourn their calves. It's kind of a sad thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. They're still delicious.
Delicious. The younger, the better. Very tender.
the other thing that Biden did there was call his wife his sister.
Oh, here we go.
Oh my God.
This is sad.
And another Bidenism.
This is
my
sad.
God.
That's awkward.
That's
getting really sad.
I mean, yesterday he told Pete Buttigieg he was ramrod, had a backbone like a ramrod. Like, how do you pick words that bad? How do you pick descriptions that bad of Pete Buttigieg? How do you call your sister, your wife, your sister?
Well, it's not going to get better for him.
No.
Let's say, I mean, obviously, it looks like he has a path here. If he becomes the nominee, that doesn't get better.
Look,
that's more stress. That's more campaign stops.
The least funny thing Donald Trump has said, because he has been on a roll and hysterical taking these people apart. But it was kind of like, I don't know if that's funny or true.
Yeah.
He said, what was it, yesterday or today? He said, look, you vote for Biden, he's not going to be running the country. He's going to be in a nursing home. Somebody else is going to be running it. They'll be able to put him in the home.
It'll be Dave, but it'll be Joe. It'll be the movie Dave, but with Joe.
The guy already said, whoever runs is my running mate has to be somebody that can be president because I could die.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great campaign promise. I mean, that's weird to me.
He tripled down on it too. He said, "No, I'm serious. No, I'm serious."
Right. It was like it was like I watched that and it was like you're standing in the room and you're thinking, am I the only one hearing this? You're laughing. No. He's serious. He's telling us something. He's trying to tell it. It's like when Hitler was like, I hate the Jews. I'm going to kill them. The Germans didn't hear it for some reason.
Kidding.
He's kidding.
Joe's
When Joe's like, you got to vote for me. I got to have a vice president because I ain't going to make it. No, I'm seriously. Let me show you my chest x-ray. I'm really sick. And everybody's like, he's joking. No. I need to tell him something.
And he's the youngest guy running. So that's scary. But have you ever taken a look, and I mean, really go back and remind yourself what people look like when men go into office, what they look like when they go into the presidency, and what they look like when they come out?
There's a possibility that Joe is so close to that end line that it starts over. He may come out looking like a baby.
Biden's also been running.
Benjamin Button. He may be about this tall. Be like,
He's gonna come out like Mini Mike.
again. I gotta wait 40 years before I'm old enough, and then I'm president again.
Conversely, like Gollum, he's been chasing his precious, so he could just end up looking like Gollum at the end of the day.
He does.
Oh, yeah, it is really sad. What do you think, Glenn, what happens to Elizabeth Warren? Does she drop out tonight?
She smoke 'em one pump. She finds some place to smoke 'em one pump. No, I don't know if she drops out tonight, because I don't know. She might be the John Kasich of the Democrats.
Yeah.
She might be in there for...
Except John Kasich won his hometown, or his home state. He didn't win anything else. He at least won his home state.
I mean, she's like, what am I, chopped liver?
And she had 2 home states and didn't win one.
It is so sad. You know, I think really on it, and I mean this sincerely, Joe Biden is winning tonight because at least people will look at him and go, I mean, I think he's compassionate. I think he does like America. I think he likes people. He's nuts, but so is my grandpa there at the end. I mean, you know, everyone else is unlikable. Bernie Sanders is just shouting at you all the time. And he's just shouting horribly. He's the guy who was on the lawn, who everyone avoided because he was constantly shouting at you. That's Bernie Sanders. Mike Bloomberg is, I don't know, is he the crazy cop that was in the neighborhood that was always whoop, and you'd stop, you're like, what's the deal? You know what? I see that your tire tread is a little low, and he's stopping you for everything, and nobody likes him. And Elizabeth Warren is everybody's grandma that you just don't want to visit. There's nobody likable there. Joe Biden is, I think he's getting, just because everybody's like, at least he's kind of normal.
But do you think this is kind of the epitome of a throwaway election? I mean, I know they want the orange man out, but they've put nothing competitive up there.
They had 400 people that were running.
None of them were competitive.
Right, that's all they got.
Yeah.
That's it. What do they have?
I've said over and over again, bad logic falls in on itself. This is the house of cards. The Civil War doesn't happen between the right and the left. It happens within the left. They'll consume one another, cancel one another, backbite, stab. I mean, it's a horrible situation to watch. It really is sad in many ways, but it's a downfall.
Who was it? Dave Rubin tonight that said he felt this was the end of the Democratic Party? I think that could be.
Well, look at it.
Yeah. I mean, it could rebirth itself as something else, but it's got to make a choice, and it's going to make the choice of the old establishment. That's over. Those days are over. It's just over. It's, you know, Joe Biden is running his campaign with the same rules that he probably used and the same lines that he used in 1978. It's a different world. So what happens to them from here?
Well, what you said earlier, I think, is prophetic in that as we move, let's say, 2 generations into this thing, socialism has gained such traction and momentum and ground and this ideology that people truly don't understand because they've never experienced. It's inevitable that with time and numbers and the expansion of a generation that's coming along, we can't help but see that thing emerge. Socialism, unfortunately, unless the divine hand of God creates a miracle for America, we're in trouble.
There is that. We have to turn our face back to God, not our backs. But the other thing is that there is a cycle. And 2024 is the top of the we cycle. The last time we had the zenith of the me cycle was during Reagan. It's a 40-year spin. And we're now at the zenith. We're approaching the zenith of the we. So now we're going to start going back to the me, which is good. Remember, Reagan was the 40-year cycle. Before Reagan, the last time we had a we cycle was during the Great Depression. And you can track it all the way back. America has always missed the dictators because we just wouldn't go that far. But if you keep going back, you'll get to the American Revolution and the French Revolution. They went in their collective we towards dictatorship. Our collective we was we the people, and we charted another course. That's changing now. But the good news is, by 2024, history tells us we start moving back the other direction.
I'd like to get to a social media question if we have time. Glenn, you're gonna wanna be in on this particular question and make sure you get your thoughts in. Hayden wants to know what sort of impact will the rumors of or actual subpoenas regarding Ukraine have on the Biden campaign if he does win the Democratic nomination? Of course, this is referring to, there was a story that came out today that the Senate was preparing subpoenas for, I believe it was Hunter Biden, into Burisma.
So I think it will be handled the same way the media, the same way except in the opposite direction that the media handled the Trump stuff. They'll make this into no big deal. It won't get any traction in the media. It will get traction with people who actually care, but they'll be able to spin this as just a vicious attack on Joe Biden because he's the candidate. I think what will really change things is if Barr takes the moves that I keep hearing rumblings of. I keep asking everybody in Washington that I know, yeah, I've heard those rumblings too, but can you give me any evidence it's actually happening? So I don't know if it's wishful thinking or if it's actual, but Barr is supposedly cleaning house and really going to come out with something, I think, this summer. If that happens, that totally changes the game for Trump.
Rob, you want to chime in?
In a good way.
And you mean from the investigation that the gentleman
whole
from
Russiagate all the way to Ukraine.
So it's not just the Durham investigation.
No, it's all of them.
It's all of them. And I think if that happens, I mean, that's the problem, right? People say the deep state. It's not the deep state. It's the administrative state that goes back to Wilson. We've talked about this before. It's the administrative state and the idea that the president isn't the person that runs the Constitution or the country, even though the Constitution says he is.
Could I just remind you that tomorrow, however, we have, and before the end of the hour, if we have time, I want to play this short clip of this interview. Tomorrow we have Dr. Robert Epstein on, who is really remarkable. He was the head of Psychology Today. He is a guy who studied the market and advertising and how it impacts people. And he just wrote an article that said the Republicans, no matter how weak the other side is, the Republicans, if it is 5 to 7 points apart, they have no chance of winning because of what tech is doing. And he gave some examples that we're going to be talking about tomorrow and showing you on tomorrow's Wednesday night special. And I want to play, if we have time before the end of the hour, to play a little bit of this interview, because that's something that nobody's talking about. What role will YouTube, Google, and Facebook play in changing people's vote without them knowing it? It's really quite amazing. All right, coming up, Steve Deace is going to join us. First, let's go to Stu for a quick update on the numbers. Stu.
I mean, we just keep saying the same thing. It's a great night for Joe Biden. I mean, it's not going to get him to start talking in full sentences. It's not magic, but it is a big night. 7 states won: Virginia, North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Minnesota. Bernie Sanders has won 3: Vermont, Utah, and Colorado. Michael Bloomberg has smoked everybody in American Samoa. It's the big story of the night, obviously. There are 3 states out there right now that are still going on and in close races. Massachusetts, Biden is leading by about 7 points as they continue to get the vote there. Maine is still tied, 34-34. Again, that was another state. Both of these were states that Sanders should have won. Warren, obviously, probably should win her own state, but she's going to wind up losing by a significant amount. Texas, Sanders still holding on there, although the vote is still coming in. You see the lead for Biden in our projected delegates is now up to about 50, which is not even close to where we started this night. Another interesting point I thought was the Democrats are always telling us about how we should just have a national popular vote. That's how everything should be decided in the election. And then they come up with all these crazy rules when they're actually doing their own primary process, which they can design from scratch. But tonight's popular vote is an interesting thing to look at. Joe Biden has had 38% of the popular vote tonight, Sanders 27%, Bloomberg 14%, and Warren 13%. Now, Sanders will close that gap with California coming in. That is about 14 minutes away from the polls closing there. He will close that gap a little bit, but I mean, this is a big night for Biden. The Minnesota thing I keep coming back to is a huge surprise. I look back at my notes. 538 gave it a 19% chance of happening. 19% chance, and it actually did. Biggest upset of the night so far. So far, Biden is continuing his very strong showing.
It is truly a night to remember for Joe Biden, if only he could remember it. We go to Steve Deace now from Blaze TV. Steve has been in the political circles for a very long time. He joins us from his home in Iowa. Give us your take on all of this, Steve. What's happening?
Well, I can't believe you introduced me with that dementia blast, but I appreciated it nonetheless.
Yes, okay.
Here's what's happening. Bernie Sanders got blitzkrieg tonight and over the last 24 hours. The system decided with a coordinated all-out attack, air, sea, land, media coordination, they just made Joe Biden the only candidate in America for 24 hours. And you can see that it has dealt a blow to Bernie Sanders. But I don't know if Stu's delegate projections there that he has are including anything from California and Texas. I think Bernie Sanders is still to get well over 300 delegates from those two states alone. And where this goes now is it becomes a war of attrition, Glenn. And if there's anything a Soviet knows anything about, it's wars of attrition. This now becomes a Stalingrad. And it becomes, who gets to 1900? No one can get to 1900. So we'll see you in Milwaukee where, Bernie's mobocracy will show up and try to take it with a hammer and a sickle. Bernie will not be deterred by perception or media reports. He doesn't care. In fact, it just kind of feeds his brand that everybody's ganged up on him now. And so now this is really just about, can I outlast the blitzkrieg? Can I last through the winter of 42? That's what Bernie Sanders is going to try to do.
So we know what Bernie Sanders is going to bring to the table with his mob. And we know that kind of pressure is going to happen. I think that will play against him with the American people. They don't like bloody revolutions. Even Woodrow Wilson, who was one of the most evil men of the 20th century in America, knew that. They don't like revolutions and blood in the streets. So what do the Democrats bring to the table to fight back on that?
They've got to figure out, how do we get Joe Biden to 1900 or so close that even, an uprising on the floor of the convention in Milwaukee can't deny him. And if you do the math, and I do the math, and if you look at what's ahead in the map, I don't know how they do that. I don't know how he gets to 1900. I think it's very possible he could have a lead going in Milwaukee, maybe even one that, the old Billy Packer basketball analysis, a working margin. But there's no lead probably other than, 5 away from the nomination that's going to deter the Bernie bros. They're on a rendezvous with destiny here from a completely different vantage point. And so
play this out.
The Democratic Party shot its wad here tonight. Go
so
ahead, Sue.
How does this play out at the convention then? Let's say that it's close but no cigar. The Bernie bros are going to get violent. They will be very, very clear. What is the strategy to make sure that it's not Bernie Sanders?
I don't know. And I'm glad that I don't have to be the one to figure that out, because I think what the Democratic Party has done, and we all know this, we all tell our audiences this, all of what Bernie said about Fidel Castro, Glenn, I've been listening to Democrats all my life say that about Fidel Castro. Before I knew what a Bernie Sanders was, Eleanor Click was saying that on the McLaughlin group when I was a kid. All he is the fulfillment of all of their cynical talking points. And so now all of a sudden you say to this mob that you incited, hey, you know what though, now that you're this close to the summit, we kind of want you to simmer down and let the adults take over and go back to the kiddie table. I don't know. Once you've unleashed the mob outside of Lot's house, I don't know how you slap a condom on it from there. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know.
This is, I spoke on Fox and got a lot of heat for talking about a book called The Coming Insurrection. It was written by French radical socialist communist revolutionaries that were in the academic world. And they outlined what we were going through right now. And I said, these people are just 10 years ahead of us. That's it. It's coming here. That is what is coming with these socialist revolution. So does Bernie get in the end? Do the Bernie bros muscle everybody to the ground and get the nomination?
I think this is a question, that Glenn, that goes even beyond mid-July. If you look at the two growing segments of the Democratic Party, the two growing segments are millennials and Hispanics. That is Bernie's base.
Yep.
And if you look at, those are ideological bases. The millennials are buying into this because they've been indoctrinated on our university campuses. And if you go down to Latin America, you will see that a lot of the Christianity down there has been fused with a neo-Marxism called liberation theology.
Yep.
And so when Hispanic voters hear what Bernie has to say, they're not buying into identity politics at all. This is the ideology that was preached in their pulpits in the country they came from or their parents came from. This is a siren song. They agree with this ideology. And so I don't know how they cap it now.
So Bill O'Reilly said earlier today, I think it was Bill, or was it Dave Rubin? One of them said, the Democratic Party, as we've known it, is over. This is the last hurrah for the Democratic Party. And I personally think that this is the beginning of the Buckley or the Goldwater movement. They lost horribly when they went to the polls, but eventually they gave birth to Ronald Reagan. And this is going to be, the fight is going to be against a constitutionalist and a socialist. Bill O'Reilly thinks socialism is over if Bernie Sanders gets the nomination. It'll be forever discredited. I completely disagree with him. Your thought?
Yeah, I disagree with that whole cloth, because we are facing a generational apocalypse where this is concerned from an ideological perspective. And our hope, we could have hope if it actually was a constitutionalist versus a socialist. But right now, what happens is the next generation is seeing it as corporatists versus socialists. And historically, socialists have always won that argument. All right. The Soviets always beat the Romanovs in the arena of idea every single time. We've actually got to get back to constitutionalism, Glenn, so that we can have a stark contrast. I mean, Bernie Sanders dropped a very clever line earlier this campaign. Now, he's too flawed of a candidate. The reason Bernie can't be elected in November isn't that he's too far left. It's that he's just too much of a jerk. He's a Soviet. He's a Nikita Khrushchev type. He doesn't inspire people. But he dropped a line earlier this year that I think your audience needs to be concerned about going forward in the future, because somebody else is going to say this in 4, 5, 10 years, and it's going to be more effective. He said that, hey, I may be a democratic socialist, but Donald Trump is a corporate socialist. What they're going to do in the future is label the Republican Party the party of corporate socialism, and they're the party of populist socialism. And the only antidote to that is the Republican Party is going to have to actually be for a republic, a constitutional republic again, instead of their side of K Street. Otherwise, they will not be able to hold back the generational mob that is coming.
Your opinion on Donald Trump running against, we now know probably will be Biden or Bernie Sanders. Who do you hope he's running against to win?
Well, if you run against Joe Biden, you're not running against him. He's got dementia. I've been telling my audience this for months. I believe that if he were running for the corporate takeover of a publicly traded company, you could get him declared incompetent in a legal trial. I think he's legally incompetent. And so Joe Biden is being propped up, and you've seen this the last 24 hours, by probably the very same people that brought us Kavanaugh hoaxes, Ukrainian hoaxes, Russian collusion hoaxes. That Joe Biden is just merely a vessel, a proxy, and he's going to get trolled to death. My concern with Trump would be, he's almost such an easy target. Do you create sympathy by crushing him, into dust? You almost have to pull up a little bit, because you can make Uncle Joe sympathetic, as Grandpa Joe. And then with Bernie Sanders, it's a different campaign. It's a pure ideological campaign. Bernie Sanders wouldn't go with any of their fig leaves or talking points or euphemisms. He's going straight on Soviet. And so you'd have to have a straight up ideological battle against him.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it. Let me go to Stu for a Massachusetts update. By the way, you can see Steve Deace on Blaze TV every day, following, I think, my show every day on linear. You can watch it at any time on demand. Lots of great things to watch on Blaze TV. Go to blazetv.com and use the promo code SUPER and you'll save 20% tonight. Do it right now. Thank you so much for watching. Let's go to Stu now for an update on Massachusetts.
Yeah, Massachusetts is, we're talking about Minnesota as maybe the biggest upset of the night. Only, I think it was a 16 or 19% chance of Bernie Sanders losing that and it going to Joe Biden. Well, we now can call Massachusetts the biggest upset of the night, as Joe Biden, who had a 6% chance to win Massachusetts coming into tonight, 6%, defeats not only Bernie Sanders, but also Elizabeth Warren in her home state. That, I mean, this just shows what a big night this is. And to talk about when you first started your interview with Steve Deace there, these projections do actually include California. So that is including a nice burst from the 200 or 300 delegates he's going to get from Texas and California are included in these numbers. Sanders, who was looking like he would be ahead after tonight in almost all circumstances, instead goes down very hard. And this is including, a pretty normal expectation night out of California for Bernie. If he does worse than it was expected, as he has in almost every other state, those numbers are going to get even more ugly. This is a bad night for Bernie. A great night for Joe Biden, and extremely ugly for Michael Bloomberg in particular, who spent so much money and before that first debate seemingly had a real chance to win some states, to get a lot of delegates. He's going to get some delegates here, but it's not going to be notable. This is a disaster for him as well. And, of course, Elizabeth Warren, who's been a disaster her whole life.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer group of people. Let's see. It is almost 11 o'clock in the East. You have been watching the Super Tuesday coverage of Blaze TV. We're about to close California. We're probably not going to know the numbers of California until tomorrow, but we'll check and find out some numbers here from California if they come out in the next few minutes. Let me go to the panel and get some final thoughts from the panel on what you're seeing and hearing from the listeners.
Yeah, Glenn, I think that the most relevant thing that we're seeing tonight is that Donald Trump, the president, has spoken about the Democrat primary. He posted a couple of tweets just a few minutes ago. The first one was, "The biggest loser tonight by far is Mini Mike Bloomberg. His political consultants took him for a ride. $700 million washed down the drain, and he got nothing for it but the nickname Mini Mike and the complete destruction of his reputation. Way to go, Mike." And I would just like to note that that was an exclamation point that he used in that.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's one question here,
What's up,
Sarah.
Stu?
I have to get your opinion on this. Why on earth is the word political in quotes on that tweet? It makes absolutely no sense. Why does he do that?
It doesn't, and I worried that I would trigger you, which is why I didn't actually say that it was in quotes, but you saw it.
Okay.
Yeah, there is no rhyme or reason for why he capitalizes or puts things in quotes.
No, I think that there is the reason that I saw him speak this weekend, and he was talking about how these political consultants were con men, that they are just going, "Mike, I'm telling you, another 200 million, and you are going to be right in there."
But that's almost in a way of saying, like, maybe consultants could be in quotes. But political, they're definitely in politics. There's no question they're in the game of politics. It's true.
Right. Maybe he means they're not good at it.
I mean,
maybe that's why he put the political in quote, because they're
do understand
so-called political consultants. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
I do understand the sentiment of saying Mike Bloomberg doesn't have the best staff, especially when you look at his social media team. Some people look at it and say, "Oh, he's got the best social media team." I'm like, they turned his picture into a meatball. That's not.
No, that was not good.
That was not a good look.
Did you know that he has a comedy writer?
No.
That he has a high-paid comedy writer on his staff for whatever lines that were comedy. Maybe that Tejas thing. Can we play that Tejas video again?
Well, he's on LSD if he does.
I mean, this is crazy.
You spent a lot of time in Texas. What do you?
Tejas, we'd say here.
No. What'd you say?
Tejas.
Tejas.
That's Spanish for Texas.
Okay. All right.
You're in a Cuban neighborhood, so you got to know.
I mean, I think that was an attempt at humor. I'm not sure. But somebody got paid for that line.
It's really, really bad. And then Donald Trump, one more tweet. You know, he's got to take another shot here. And this one was at Elizabeth Warren. He said, Elizabeth Stu, in quotes, Pocahontas.
Okay, but that makes sense. That's a part where you would use quotation marks.
I'm letting you know what's in quotes. Elizabeth, quote, Pocahontas Warren, other than Mini Mike, was the loser of the night. She didn't even come close to winning her home state of Massachusetts. Well, now she can just sit back with her husband and have a nice cold beer.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah, I think I'll grab me a beer.
Chad's already got
I'm getting the Corona.
His beer.
All right. We want to thank you so much for watching. I want to leave you with one thing that is really important. Tomorrow, on the Wednesday night special, we are going to be doing a special on the integrity of the election, which you're going to hear a lot of people, especially Bernie Sanders people, say, you know, there's no integrity in this election. Russia is trying to steal it, etc. We give you the truth on Russia and what they're really doing, but that is such a small part. I want you to see just a little clip of tomorrow night's special. This is an interview with Dr. Robert Epstein, who's going to be making, I think, a pretty big announcement on tomorrow's show about Google, Facebook, and YouTube, and how they are manipulating people's free will. It is beyond any kind of subliminal message that was spliced into a film, as they used to do, or say that people did in the 70s. This is actually changing millions of minds without people even knowing it. Watch.
Some folks at the big tech companies, Google in particular, they call Election Day in 2016, they call that Armageddon Day. And they've been determined since that day. We know this from leaked videos. We know this from whistleblowers. Right. They have been determined from that day forward to make sure that not only that Trump is not reelected, but that the Democrats sweep the country. And what they're doing is subverting the system. They're undermining the system, generally speaking, without people knowing that they're doing it on a massive scale. And they're doing it in ways that authorities cannot trace, cannot track.
That is tomorrow. Look for the full interview, an amazing hour every Wednesday night. It's our Wednesday night special. You don't want to miss it. It'll be on Blaze TV. If you are a subscriber, thank you. If you're not, what are you waiting for? Join us. All of the big voices of this conservative movement are here. And soon, the Daily Wire will be ours. You can get $20 off by using the promo code SUPER tonight. Use the promo code SUPER. You get $20 off of your yearly subscription at blazetv.com/super, promo code SUPER. We will see you tomorrow night for our Wednesday night special on Blaze TV, and first thing tomorrow morning on Blaze Radio. We begin with Pat Gray, Unleashed, on Blaze TV, then into my radio program where we will have all the details and everything out of California tomorrow on Blaze TV. Thanks for watching.
Which is amazing. I mean, because it was the opposite. I mean, Bernie was way ahead. And when you say no one will win, that means no one will get the majority of delegates before the actual convention.
And then if that happens, then Milwaukee, it was nice knowing you. It's going bye-bye. Yeah. They are not going to take this very well at all. This is very similar. If you remember was it Dukakis and